You've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. You know how it is here on Mondays. Sometimes the cobwebs get a little bit heavy on the inner tubes, and we got to make sure that the things are connected before we start. But it looks like they are. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and scalding hot Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, boy, oh boy, we're talking about Steve Bannon. His trial is starting 1 week from today. 1 week. We're going to start with jury selection. And then the following day on Tuesday, we're going to start in earnest with opening arguments, both sides here in the Steve Bannon versus United States of America, or the other way, I should say, USA versus Steve Bannon, because they are prosecuting him with 2 counts of contempt of Congress for 1, not showing up, and number 2, not delivering any documents. Well, over the weekend, there was some big Steve Bannon news. Donald Trump sent a letter over to Steve Bannon and said, why don't you go ahead and testify? Don't have any issues with that. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and withdraw this executive privilege. That's going to free you up to testify. And Bannon's lawyers sent in a notice to the committee that he is going to testify or is open to testifying. And there were a lot of fireworks in court today. So to help piece this all together, let's go ahead and take a look at our mind map. And of course, you can follow along at home if you'd like to do so over at j6mindmap.com. I was taking a look at some people in the chat here. Shout out to K Bean. Just Cause is in the house, and Just is telling me that gifted membership is now allowed. And so I wonder if that is something. Yes, I still haven't figured that out yet. All right. So anyways, here is the mind map. Now, as you can see, we've got 3 areas of update that we have to attend to today. We're talking about prosecutions, the big news that came out over the weekend, and the big news today is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon had oral arguments in court, and there were a sort of a flurry of motions that we talked about on this channel previously. Leading up to today, we know that trial is scheduled for next week. It starts with jury selection on the 18th, and then we've got the actual trial that starts on Tuesday. And so we're going to have to really, we're already paying close attention to all of this. I today sent an email over to the court reporters. Today it was Lorraine, I won't use her full name, but it was Lori who was over there helping today. And so she's finishing up the transcript. And the plan is that we're going to get the full transcripts for Steve Bannon when trial does start. And we'll just break them down as we did with the Michael Sussman trial. But I don't have the transcripts today because we don't have that set up. So we're going to unpack what happened. There was a letter from Trump. There was a letter to the committee. The prosecutors freaked out about this. Zoe Lofgren, one of the House of Representatives individuals, was out over the weekend. I think actually yesterday. Well, actually today is Monday. I lost track of time already. Swalwell was giving reaction to Steve Bannon testifying, and we're going to hear from Bannon's defense lawyer as he exited court. So we've got a lot to get to there. We also are going to spend some time going through some updates with the J6 committee because we left off with them last week where they were sitting down on Friday with this guy, Pat Cipollone. He was former White House counsel, and the committee sent him a subpoena very, very last minute. You know, he was somebody who wasn't going to get a subpoena at the beginning. And then after Cassidy Hutchinson's horrendous testimony, they decided they were going to send a subpoena out to him, and they did. We saw last week that they agreed to a transcribed interview. This was supposed to take place on Friday, and I guess it did because we get some more information from Zoe Lofgren. We've got 3 clips from her. She kind of drew the short end of the committee stick. Everybody else was sleeping it off over the weekend. And Zoe, they're like, it's your turn, Zoe. Like, you got to go talk to Wolfie. You got to go talk to Tappery. Get out there and do your part to stop the insurrection of American democracy. And so you can see she did that. She was out all over the place. And so we've got several clips from her to break down. And then, my goodness, there was even more that came out today. Now, you may be a purveyor of this establishment, but the Gateway Pundits, oh my goodness, they came out with a bombshell today. And we filed this one under our notes section, if you're following along at home, under the counters section. We have a whole slew of counters to the Scam January 6th committee hearing. We've got a hyperbole category. We've got a double standards category, a House decides category, right? That there's history of how the House deciding the elections, actual conspiracies category, and legal counters. Now, this one is going to go into the law enforcement category, and we've broken up the law enforcement category into two main buckets here. One, law enforcement was negligent in protecting the Capitol, or let's say grossly negligent, or number two, that they were actually complicit in some of the nefariousness that went on that day. And this is going in that category, the latter category. A CHS, according to the Gateway Pundit, embedded with the FBI, and we have a multi-page report that we are going to go through. Here's a preview of this thing. It is 37 pages long. You see right here, front and center, unclassified FBI CHS reporting document, okay, taking place in December of 2020. And so what this means, my friends, as you can see, is boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to get to today. And so we're going to zoom back out on this. Again, if you want to follow along at home, it's at j6mindmap.com. We've got several J6 Mind Map hearings coming up this week. Of course, Insurrection Bingo card is there via our friends over at C-SPAN Review on Twitter. We've got a couple memes. Now, actually, this is pretty bare, but we're going to probably be adding some additional memes in the near future because we have, I think, 2 more hearings left. And you can see many of us are sort of feeling like Ben Affleck here, sort of feeling like the video staff, or you could put on here America, right? Like America is kind of tired of this, but the show must go on because they've got some indictments that they need convictions on. And Steve Bannon is where we are going to start. Now, before we get there, if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can see there's the address right there. And we've got an amazing community of people who are all chatting away. And we share stories throughout the day. We chat in the comments. I post daily videos of the walk and talks. If you've seen some of the walk and talks on YouTube, then those happen every day on Locals, mostly every day. No, I didn't do one on Sunday. But other than that, it's sort of carrying on the conversation before and after the show. You also get those if you're a YouTube membership supporter. You can click that join button right next to the subscribe button. I really appreciate that. Shout out to Curtis Bartles in the house, who's a member. Ronnie Cole's also a member. And I know they're Jenny B, ZZ the Boxing Cat. Yeah, Kate Bean's in the house, Curtis Bartle, Jenny B, all supporting the show on YouTube. And they get, of course, the daily walk and talks. And if you know anybody in the state of Arizona who happens to be in trouble with the law, well, that's what we do. That's my day job. I'm a lawyer. I run the R&R Law Group. It's a criminal defense law firm located in Scottsdale. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. And if you know anybody, 480-787-0394 is our phone number, where we offer free case evaluations and more. And that is the place to be to join the show and support the work that we're doing. But back to business. You can see we're starting here with Steve Bannon. A lot of activity on this. We've been following this case for quite some time. To get up to speed, remember that this was all out of an indictment stemming from contempt of Congress. Steve Bannon got a subpoena back in September 2021. Got a subpoena, said you got to be here and show up in front of our scam committee by a certain period of time, give us your documents by October, and show up thereafter. He didn't do that. And so right after that, basically a month after he was ordered to show up into Congress, he got the indictment in November. He was arrested in November 15th, and then boom, got an arraignment. We had joint status reports, and the cases really started in earnest after that time. Now, we followed along. There was an oral argument on a motion to dismiss back in June. There was a motion to compel disclosures. And now we're getting really close to trial, because trial is coming up here on the 18th, like literally 1 week away from today. Trial, it's here. Oh, we've been waiting for this. Okay, so trial readiness. Now, we've got a lot to unpack. We've got jury instructions, motions to continue, motions in limine, declination of charging decisions. We've covered all of that. But today we were here for the oral arguments on some of those final motions. Okay, so as I sort of went a little too quickly here, all of these were issues that we already started talking about. We talked about whether there was going to be a continuance of the trial. Okay, Steve Bannon and his lawyers, they don't want the trial to start on Monday. Why? Well, because the January 6th committee is also running their public trial. And a big part of their argument is that Steve Bannon and Donald Trump and all of the people who supported them, including Republicans who voted for them, it's that they are insurrectionists who are wrecking America. Well, if you're a criminal defendant, you sort of don't want to be going through the system while that is running in parallel to you. You'd rather get a fair trial where every single day your jurors don't go home after the trial and sit down and listen to the news talking about the endless insurrection, on and on and on and on and on, around and around we go. So the problem here is that we don't know, up until today, we don't know what the rulings are on these things. Is there going to be a continuance? Is the trial going to be postponed? Can Bannon talk about prosecutorial misconduct? Can Bannon make the argument that these people are political partisan hacks? Is he allowed to say that? Well, the judge listened to oral arguments on that today. We were scheduled for this, and we were really prepared to just sort of unpack many of these arguments, right? We were going to go through and talk about the continuance and motions in limine and the jury instructions and all that. But over the weekend, a big whopper came out of Donald Trump's office, and you can see him. Look at that little smirk. He knows what he's doing. It's all part of the plan, he says. And here, Donald Trump submitted this letter. So let's take a look at this. It says here, on July 9th, so that would have been on what, Saturday? Let's confirm that here. Yeah, Saturday. This goes out. It says, Dear Steve, dear Steve, Donald Trump, dear, very nice opening. He says, Dear Steve, I write about the subpoena that you received in September 2021 from the illegally constituted Unselect Committee, the same group of people who created the Russia scam, impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, the Mueller witch hunt, which ended in, quote, no collusion, and other fake never-ending yarns and tales. Which I love that, yarns and tales. When you first received the subpoena to testify and provide documents, I invoked executive privilege, says Trump. However, I watched how unfairly you and others have been treated, having to spend vast amounts of money on legal fees and all of the trauma you must be going through for the love of your country and out of respect for the office of the president. Therefore, if you reach an agreement on a time and place for your testimony, Trump says, I will waive executive privilege for you, which allows you to go in and testify truthfully and fairly as per the request of the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and Hacks, who have allowed no due process, no cross-examination, and no real Republican members or witnesses to be present or interviewed. It is a partisan kangaroo court. Why should these evil, sinister, and unpatriotic people be allowed to hurt and destroy the lives of so many and cause such great harm to our country? It has been, from the time I came down the escalator on Trump Tower, a political hit job against the overwhelming majority of Americans who support the concept and policy of making America great again and putting America first. Trump says, good luck in all your future endeavors. Sincerely, Donald Trump, America's favorite president. He didn't say that. I added that. Now, this is a letter that goes over to Trump. Now, many of the cynics out there, you might be saying to yourself, well, this is very convenient, isn't it? Very, very convenient. Right on Saturday, the day before your oral arguments, right on the verge of trial, Donald Trump just sends a letter. Oh, you know all of this hubbub? You know all of this problem that has been causing all of this ruckus? We're just going to reverse that right now. He said, well, we're just going to withdraw that executive privilege here, sir. There you go. It is the biggest. It's a troll. It's a 100% troll. Okay. It's a troll 1,000 times. And I absolutely love it. So let's see what happens now. So then this goes over to Bannon's lawyer, and Bannon's lawyer takes it. He says, oh, perfect. This is going to be fun. So he grabs this document open, and let's zoom in on this puppy a little bit. It tells us that on July 9th, coming from Davidoff, Hutcher, and Citron, attorneys for Mr. Bannon. This one's written off on here by Robert Costello, who was pretty involved in the impeachments. He says, Dear Chairman Thompson, this is going over to Fishing Benny, who is the actual chairman of the committee, right? Dear Chairman, on the morning of October 19th, you denied our request for a 1-week adjournment in the light of filing of a lawsuit by Trump, saying that when you originally sent us the subpoena, we asked for a continuance. We asked for more time to respond to your fake subpoena because of the fact that we're filing another lawsuit. Later that same day, your committee voted to recommend Bannon for a finding of criminal contempt. Okay, we asked you for more time. You said no, and you made a criminal referral. After that, later that same day, you wrote to me to make a point to your committee was always willing to hear Bannon's testimony should he, quote, change his posture. And you remember those letters. Benny Thompson would send those out. And Benny would say, well, we'll be here if you change your mind. I mean, this is very sad that you're not showing up to our scam committee, but if you'd like to change your mind, we'll be here. And so just let us know. And so the attorney is saying, remember when you said that? I do. Mr. Bannon has not had a change of posture or heart. Okay. Mr. Bannon has always been consistent that because of President Trump and because he invoked executive privilege regarding his testimony, Bannon was obligated to comply. Unless and until either your committee reached a constitutionally required accommodation, right? Saying that there is a permissible reason why this committee should get access to this testimony without executive privilege or in spite of executive privilege. Is there an exception to executive privilege that the Constitution provides for? Is what this defense attorney is talking about. I informed you that if either of those events took place, if we had a reason why there was an exception, or if Trump removed that executive privilege, we would come and testify. I told you Bannon would comply. While Mr. Bannon has been steadfast in his convictions, circumstances have now changed. President Trump has provided us with a letter, which is attached, attesting to the fact that back in October, he did invoke executive privilege. And in light of the surrounding circumstances of any effort here, President Trump has decided that it would be in the best interest of America and the people of America to waive executive privilege for Bannon to allow Mr. Bannon to comply with the subpoena. Mr. Bannon is willing to and prefers, he says, right? This is beautiful. Mr. Bannon is willing to and indeed prefers to testify at your public hearing. So we don't want this behind the closed doors garbage. Okay, don't play a bunch of our video clips with your video editors. Put Bannon out in front of the American people. He prefers to testify at your public hearing. Please contact me so we can reach an agreement on the time and place of Bannon's testimony. Very truly yours, Robert Costello. So now you're saying, oh, this is just golden, baby. Because we've talked about this previously. Remember, one of the arguments that we had sort of floated around is what happens if the Republicans take over the committee and the Republicans are now in charge and they say, we don't actually need Steve Bannon to testify anymore. We withdraw that subpoena. We're going to quash that subpoena and we don't need you to testify at all. Is there still a crime here? Because he's now complying with the law. Well, we're going to have to see. The prosecutors say no. The prosecutors say no. The crime was already committed when he didn't show up back in October. So let's break this down a little bit further. Here, we can see Trump sent a letter, you're free to talk. They sent a letter back over to the committee. They said, perfect, we're free to talk. Before oral arguments took place today, prosecutors say, no, you're not. Okay, hold on a minute. And they filed this motion in limine to exclude evidence or argument relating to this 11th hour assertion that he's going to testify. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute. And actually, let's get this out of the way right now. So here is this motion. This motion came from the prosecutors today, and I can't tell what time it was. It might have been first thing this morning. It might have been filed sort of contemporaneous with the oral arguments. But remember, we're already scheduled for oral arguments today. All of this testimony stuff, we didn't learn about it until Saturday. Okay, so that was not even on the docket. We weren't planning on talking about any of this stuff. So the prosecutors, they get the news reports, the same reports that we got from everybody saying Donald Trump has now authorized Steve to testify. Steve's going to go out and testify. We all say, wow, okay. Here now we get an actual argument from the prosecutor filed simultaneously saying, look, judge, when this trial starts, you cannot not let Steve Bannon talk about any of this stuff. Okay, you can't let his lawyers get up there and tell him that he said he was going to testify. You can't let them talk about Donald Trump revoking his executive privilege protections to allow Bannon to testify. You can't talk about any of that, okay? Because all of this is just a big publicity stunt is really what this prosecutor is talking about. Now, it's 5 pages long, and it says, according to public news reports, at midnight on July 10th, the defendant claimed to the select committee he would be willing to testify before it. And they're talking about this New York Times article. The defendant and their last-minute efforts to testify almost 9 months after he already defaulted, meaning he didn't show up to testify, right? He was ordered to testify and he didn't show up. Says he still made no effort to produce any of these records, and any evidence about his 11th hour efforts to show up should be excluded. And they're going to make the argument that the crime happened when he was ordered to be there and he didn't show up. That's it, right? It's not a crime of sort of continuation. The defendant has been charged with criminal contempt for failure to show up. The criminal statute is not intended to procure compliance. It's intended to punish past non-compliance, right? And so she's referencing some different case law here. 1935 case, 1970 case. We have another U.S. Supreme Court case, 1897. So some older cases there. The charge defaults were complete at the deadlines. So when Bannon didn't show up on that time, like Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney are sitting there counting down the clock. They're just like, no, ding, crime committed, because that's what those people do. And so that's exactly what this argument says. The evidence lack of probative value, right? This is a big catch-all rule that we talk a lot about. It's called Rule 403. When stuff is too harmful rather than it is helpful, we say it's not allowed in court. We want to make sure that evidence is relevant and useful before we allow it in. And so the prosecutor here is saying any of this stuff from Bannon is not relevant because it's just too harmful. The defendant's timing suggests that the only thing that has really changed is that he finally is about to face the consequences of his actions. Bannon now knows the walls are closing in. The clock is ticking. And so on Saturday, at a last-minute drop, they try to change the game. On June 15th, the court denied his motion to dismiss. And so all of this goes on and on, right? And so now Bannon is scrambling is the argument. And they also were saying the government notes that the defendant's attorney now works for the former president and is being paid by the president's super PAC. So we got some conflict of interest stuff going on. All above circumstances suggest that Bannon's wish to testify is not genuine, saying it's a last-ditch attempt to avoid any accountability. Should evidence relating to it be introduced at trial, it's going to lead to extensive exploration. The resulting mini-trial is irrelevant and should be precluded. Signed here by Amanda Vaughn. She's the prosecutor who is leading this case up. And Amanda Vaughn, of course, we know she is this individual down here. Amanda Vaughn was very involved in the original indictment. So she's been on this case this entire time. These are the defense attorneys. Dave Scone, we're going to talk about him in a minute, but that motion was written by Miss Vaughn. And now what we're going to do, before we get into some reaction, is let's go to the actual proceedings that took place today. We're going to go to the proceedings that took place today. So I want to start off by going over here with Roger Parloff. Roger Parloff did an awesome job on this today, so please go follow him. And he's a journalist, senior editor over at Lawfare, published Yahoo Finance, Airmail, New York Times, all of the places. And he did a great job. So he started us off today, and he says, all right, America, listen. An important pretrial hearing is about to begin in the Steve Bannon criminal contempt prosecution. His trial is scheduled to begin next week on Tuesday. He's talking about oral arguments. Jury selection starts Monday. There are a number of open issues, including Bannon's attempts to put off the trial, to push it out to October. And so he's there. He's listening to all this close. And Roger tells us, all right, America, it's Monday morning. Everybody's a little bit cranky today, but Judge Carl Nichols just arrived. Steve Bannon's not present, which is allowed during a pretrial proceeding. And so the judge is going to hear from the government on all of the different topics. And remember, right, we've got all of these different issues that we had explored previously. We've got Bannon, prosecutors, we got a reply, a surreply. Prosecutor submitted this omnibus motion, right? This is 17 pages, precluded from making proper arguments or improper arguments, right? These are the things the prosecutor is trying to basically muzzle the defense. And that's a normal thing. And the defense is going to try to muzzle the prosecutor. But that's exactly what's happening. So we go back over. Roger tells us the first issue that's up here in Bannon's oral arguments is technical, but it is important. Basically, does the jury have to hear about and decide Bannon's objections to the composition or not? Right? So this is a very technical argument, but you're familiar with this because we've spent a lot of time talking about this. Remember, on the mind map at j6mindmap.com, which is where we house all of our arguments against this stupid scam committee, up here we have a justification or an explanation as to why this committee is so illegal. HR 503, which is the document that gives this body breath. It's like the constitution of this document, of this committee. Okay, the United States of America, we, a long time ago, we used to have a constitution that we cared about. Remember when that happened, there is a similar thing going on with this committee. They created HR 503. It's supposed to be like a constitution that matters, but very much like what many of the bureaucrats think about our constitution, and it doesn't matter. They think the same thing about this document. It also doesn't matter, because here, section 2 under composition, it says, this document says, this creates the establishment of this committee. And it says the speaker shall appoint 13 members to this committee, 5 of whom shall be appointed after consultation with the minority leader. Turns out the committee is not made of anything even close to resembling that. It's 7 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Both those Republicans are not going to be there in less than 6 months. So it's an illegal committee through and through. Now, the question that Judge Nichols is unpacking for everybody is whether the jury can hear anything about that. Okay, you and I have heard all about it because I've been beating this into the ground like a dead horse, but nobody has shown me a written ruling from a court in America, not one, from a court in America. And apparently Judge Nichols ruled on this, okay, but it was at oral arguments, and he said he's not issuing a written ruling. And I want to know why that is, right? Why is it? Because he doesn't want to put it in writing. I'd love to see a written order as to what. No, I don't even need to see a written order. I would like to see any order saying this argument, that this committee from a judge is legally constituted. Okay, that it is legally constituted. The justification for that. Have not seen it. All right, so enough of me. Now here, the judge already refused the request to dismiss Bannon's case on those grounds. Now, this is different. The judge not dismissing a case is very different than a judge saying the committee is legally constituted. Okay, now a bunch of just very low IQ individuals are all over Twitter saying that because the judge didn't dismiss the case on the basis of an illegal constitution, that this means that the committee is legally justified, right? It legally constituted. That is not the same argument at all. Now, he's not going to dismiss this. Why? Because it came from the Department of Justice, right? And he's not somebody who has the power to go and eliminate a co-equal branch of government. Okay, Judge Nichols is not capable of invalidating a congressional committee. But a lot of people are saying that he has that power or authority. But I've not seen any because it doesn't exist, okay? Because the committee is unlawful. That's why nobody's going to find it and ever send it to me. That's why I'm so braggadocious about this thing. Roger Parloff, the judge already refused to dismiss. Yeah, I know, but that doesn't mean it's legally constituted. And the U.S. attorney, Molly Gaston, is this Gaston like in Beauty and the Beast? It's probably Gaston. We're going to call it Gaston. Speaking for the government, she's arguing that these are legal questions decided by the judge, and these questions don't go to the jury. So don't let the jurors know that this committee is illegally constituted. Do not tell them, Judge, please, for the love of God. She's now moved on to a cluster of other complex issues about the degree to which, if at all, the jury is going to grapple with things like executive privilege and what kind of privilege Bannon was entitled to. The crime is willful default, says Molly Gaston. In failing to respond to the subpoena, Molly says, for instance, an honest mistake about the date of the deposition, that would be a defense. If Bannon's like, I put it in my calendar wrong. You know how these things are. I put it for PM instead of AM. I had no idea. I mean, I wasn't going to show up there at 8:30 PM and I realized, but I already missed it. And so, And Molly says that would have been okay, but everything else is not. And Bannon's justification or Bannon's reliance on executive privilege is not sufficient. Judge Nichols now wants to hear about Bannon's request to delay the trial. Why is this going all the way out? He says, why do you want to delay it until October? Well, the government says the offense was already completed. Okay, when he didn't show up in October, that was it. Crime committed. It's like the candy bar past the entry point, right? Went out, gone, crime committed. And so the decision now about whether to comply, okay, the fact that Bannon is going to go show up there and do his song and dance is irrelevant. He was already committed a crime. The crime was completed 9 months ago. And the judge says, okay, well, if the crime was completed 9 months ago, then why are we in such a hurry, huh? Why the rush to try the trial now rather than 3 months from now? Because you guys were previously arguing that like we needed to really like rush this thing through. And it's because one argument would be because Bannon's not in compliance. So you got to punish him for being out of compliance. Well, what happens if he gets nudged back into compliance? Well, do you still need that long length of time? Where, in other words, there's no urgency, is there? So Gaston says, well, Judge, this is the reason why. It's bad precedent. Okay, if the defendant can engage in total noncompliance and then on the eve of trial just change his mind, it's a different kind of contempt and a kind of obstruction that should not be validated, right? You shouldn't be allowed to do that. If you, Judge, if you continue this case out or if you dismiss this charge, then every single person is going to do what Steve Bannon just did. You're going to incentivize them to go out there, delay, try everything under the sun, and then give in at the last minute. Sure, now I'll go testify. Saying that would be incentivizing bad behavior. And so the judge says, okay. And the judge right now is just doing this thing where the judge is exploring all of the maximums, right? Sort of it's a theory of constraints. Let's take this one variable in this whole equation, and we're just going to pull it all the way back here. So you keep pulling it. Okay, it breaks. And at that breaking point, that's going to give us some different, we're going to be able to see what the limits of some of these rules are. So the judge says that and says specifically, so what you're saying is nothing Steve Bannon would do right now. Okay. Bannon showed up to Liz Cheney's house tomorrow with a friggin' briefcase and a wheelbarrow full of documents that he wheeled out of Trump Tower. You're saying that doesn't change anything, Molly? And Molly says, that's right. Sorry, Judge. No wheelbarrows are going to save Bannon. Now, prosecutor says, now addressing some of these other issues, Bannon listed for delays other than the 11th hour change of heart, they're calling this. Bannon claimed he had adverse pretrial publicity from the January 6th coverage, but they're saying it's not about him. Bannon brought up the fact that 10 years ago, Gaston herself worked on one of the same committees as the J6 chief counsel. They were in the same book club and they ended 2 years ago. Gaston says that's irrelevant and it's silly. So what if we used to work together? So what if we go to the same cocktail parties? So what if I hate Trump just as much as everybody else? Nobody cares. Prosecutor now turns to the motions in limine, right? These are the preliminary motions that go out in trial. These are the little muzzles to put on the other side so that they cannot communicate. And this is very common. This is something that happens, and we've covered many of these before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But she says, Bannon's counsel, well, let's back up. The government is worried about Bannon politicizing this trial, right? Bannon, of course, is somebody who can gather a lot of attention. He's got a huge show and a huge audience, and he's leading a huge movement, right? I mean, people are sort of following him and organizing themselves according to different precinct committee strategies and stuff. And it really has the left freaked out big time. I mean, I saw a lot of that today. And now they're saying that Bannon's going to try to make this thing about politics. And they're saying it's not about politics. And we're all going, what? Are you nuts? The whole stinking sham committee is political. That's where this all started from. It's all 100% political. And so the prosecutor is going to say, well, Bannon's going to try to politicize this thing. Bannon's counsel had suggested that they wanted to bring in and before the jury the fact that there was a minimum jail term, 30 days, when it's sort of well-established law that the juries don't hear about penalties, which is true. The government is switching over to Amanda Vaughn. And so let's drop in Molly Gaston. So I hadn't heard of Molly Gaston yet. We're going to have to look into her now and see what she's got here. Molly Gaston. And if we can't find a picture, maybe we'll use Gaston. But anyways, back over to Roger. So Amanda Vaughn's now up. She's addressing Bannon's motion, asking for materials to show why they did not indict Scavino or Meadows. We covered this motion pretty much at length. This was the idea, right? Remember, Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino were two other people who were under the subject of scrutiny from the committee. They did not get charged. And a big question was, why not? Bannon's lawyers wanted to know why. They said, you typically will write a declination letter in the files, right? Like, you're not going to prosecute them. You're going to say, I'm not going to prosecute them. Why? Not in the interest of justice. Evidence does not support a likelihood of conviction, or whatever they write in there. You're going to give us that, right? Vaughn says, no, we're not going to give you that at all. It has no relevance. It came well after the fact, after Bannon failed to comply. And so there's no precedent at all that justifies Bannon's lawyers getting these internal deliberations. So then Roger says, all right, now we're on episode 19, tweet 19. He says, now we're sliding into what I think is the most important question. Bannon wants to present a rare defense called entrapment by estoppel. He wants to argue that essentially he was tricked into believing he was entitled to ignore these subpoenas by DOJ memos. Is very high level executive officials have absolute immunity. Now, we also talked a lot about this. So this was the argument. Bannon and his lawyers, if you recall, they submitted like 1,000 pages of documents. It may not have been that much, but it was a lot. And these were all documents from the DOJ, from the Office of Legal Counsel, from the FBI, Department of whatever. I mean, it was a lot. And all of those different documents were opining. They were all giving opinions on executive privilege, on how executive officials are ordered and called to testify, and what the different rules are about this, right? How does the Department of Justice deal with these issues historically when these issues pop up, right? These like manuals. The law might say one thing, but you've got different manuals. The DOJ's got a manual. Different law enforcement agencies have manuals on how they do all this stuff. And so we want to make sure that they're following all of this, that all of these manuals are being appropriately followed. And Bannon was relying on those manuals and on those memos to make his legal decisions. So they gathered just phone books of these documents, and they say, look, Bannon cannot be charged because he was relying on your documents. So you, prosecutors, DOJ, are now estopped. You are prohibited from prosecuting him because you entrapped him, essentially. You brought him into this through your stupid policies. So he wants to say they can't continue forward with the prosecution. And he says the obvious problem with that argument is that Bannon wasn't an executive official during the time of all of this, right? He had already left. He was an indicted podcaster, Roger says. I think that's pejorative. He was an indicted podcaster is what I think that might be pejorative. But we're not going to hold it against Roger. He says he left Trump admin in August 2017, but the judge is still weighing whether Bannon can make this argument to the jury, even though the judge has already rejected it himself. If so, the evidence about Scavino and Meadows might be relevant. And now so he's going to fast forward through this, right? We've spent a lot of time on this argument, so I don't want to unpack all of it here. Judge Nichols is going to hear from lawyers for the House of Representatives now. Okay, so remember, Bannon, and we covered this in a prior video, but Bannon actually sent subpoenas to all sorts of other people, and he wanted them there in court. He sent subpoenas to, I think, Pelosi and many others. So the House of Representatives, they sent their lawyer down. They're there arguing about these motions as well, because they also want to put a muzzle on Bannon and his lawyers. They're addressing the trial subpoenas that Bannon sent to 16 House officials, including 12 members of Congress. And I never got to see the full list of those subpoenas because they never released them. Now, I know that they were flying out all over the place, and we know because there was news stories about different people who got served with them, but we never got to see the full list. And so, I don't know if Pelosi got served with a big fat subpoena or not. Doug Letter, the House General Counsel, says Bannon is trying to turn this into some sort of political circus, as though it's not already. Can you believe these people? The Letter himself, one of those subpoenaed are here, right? The Letter himself is one of those subpoenas, as are Pelosi, all 9 members of the J6 committee, Majority Leader Clyburn, Majority Whip Hoyer, and 3 staffers for the J6 committee. So they subpoenaed the whole stinking committee, which is just hysterical. So then they bring out somebody else from the House of Representatives. Her name is Michelle Callan. She's addressing those subpoenas, and she says it's very hard to examine any of this stuff. Judge Nichols is saying, okay, look, if we let the jury hear Bannon's objections about the composition, wouldn't Pelosi have relevant evidence about this, right? Here, this is very interesting. Judge Nichols, as they're going through this debate, is now asking the House of Representatives, saying, excuse me, we're having an argument about whether this entire committee is lawful or legal, whether it should be 9 members or 13. So Bannon's lawyers sent a subpoena to all of the people on the committee, including Nancy Pelosi. So if the issue is about the lawfulness and of the constitution of the committee, wouldn't Pelosi have some relevant evidence about that? Obviously, yes. Now they're getting into the issue of whether all of those officials are immune. Okay, whether Pelosi and those people are immune from the criminal trial subpoena under the speech and debate clause. So do you see how rigged this whole stinking system is? They get to issue their subpoenas with their fake illegally constituted committees. And then when Bannon wants to get them to come and testify about how they created their fake illegal committees, they're immune because of the speech and debate clause. So it's protecting them from having to show up in trial because they're doing things within their official duties. House lawyer acknowledges that some materials sought by the subpoena, like Pelosi's tweets, discussions with the press, says, yeah, those things are not covered by the speech and debate clause, but they're still irrelevant to the standards in a criminal trial. So the House continues and says, now Callan's arguing about whether the J6 was properly composed, saying that's a question for the judge, not for the jury. And that judge should defer, see this, the judge should defer to the House's own judgment on those questions. Okay. This is what I've been saying. People are out. If I'm wrong on, I would love to be wrong on this. I would love to, honestly, I would love somebody to send me an email and just say, hey, moron, here it is. It has not happened yet. Honestly, I'd bring it here. I'd show you it. I'd say, hey, I was wrong on this, but I don't think I am, because here the House representative, who's there, the lawyer, right, for the House of Representatives, is saying now Callan is arguing that the J6 Constitution question, it's for the judge, not the jury. And the judge, in answering that question, really shouldn't even think about it, okay? Just should defer to the House's own judgment on those questions, which is what the judge has been doing. Saying, I can't make a decision about whether what you have, the judge is not going to step out of the judicial branch and go into somebody else's house and say, what you're doing here is illegal, because he doesn't have the power to do that. And he is not a little tyrannical lunatic like they are. So you can't fault the judge for it. I mean, the judge is living within his hula hoop. The J6 committee is not. Roger Parloff says that this House attorney is now talking about another kind of partial immunity for high-level government officials. And so this is a doctrine intended to keep busy officials from being bogged down by subpoenas, and saying these 16 subpoenas are filed in bad faith on Bannon's part, alluding to a press conference where he said, I'm telling you right now, this is going to be the misdemeanor from hell from Eric Garland, for Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden. Remember when he was out there? We're going on offense. Judge said, all right, hold on a minute. We're going to take a break. We get a 10-minute break, and they come back. Roger gives us a little bit of he says, one obvious aside about these witnesses, Bannon has always wanted to delay this. He wants to make it as long as possible. Says, if Republicans take the House in the midterms, it's very likely that they'll try to issue a resolution retroactively declaring all the subpoenas invalid. No one knows if that would have any effect on this case. But when the composition of the current SCOTUS, there is even greater doubt than usual. One of Bannon's lawyers, Evan Corcoran, even alluded to this possibility at the last pretrial hearing. All right. Yeah. That's Bannon's defense. Okay. And we speculated about this. I explained last time when Bannon came out of court and he was like laughing at the whole situation. He was like, nobody cares. He didn't care at all. And I've seen a lot of people laugh in the face of court proceedings. Okay. And sometimes I can tell when it's genuine and fake. I've seen a lot of people scared in court proceedings. Bannon is literally laughing at this whole stinking thing, like laughing at it. Now it's different. Like Navarro is not, right? But Bannon is. And Bannon, evidently, like this is the strategy. Republicans win. They go back. They invalidate the whole stupid committee. And if there's questions about it, it goes up to SCOTUS. SCOTUS says, yeah, you can't do this because none of this is constitutional. I mean, you might make an argument that it is constitutional, but when you have questions of constitutionality, right, they have to sort of run in parallel with a lot of the other constitutional protections we have in this country. Things like equal protection and due process. These are concepts that weave themselves into the fabric of the entire operation of our federal government. You just can't say, because we hate Donald Trump, that we're going to form our own committee that operates outside of those standard operating procedures. You don't just get to do that, because the base layer is due process. That's the base layer. So when all this works its way up, they're going to look at this committee and they're going to say, were there any levers of due process in there? I mean, was this literally like a high school book report pep rally? Yeah, it was. And it results, well, look, you might hate Steve Bannon. He wasn't there on January 6th. Wasn't there. And he has been prosecuted for this, for not showing up to a committee that was entirely created outside of the plain reading of the text, plain reading of their own rules. Doesn't even follow that. So it's multiple layers of unconstitutional, in my opinion. Now, I think, right, that the pendulum in this country is going to swing so hard that Bannon's probably going to be right. They take their little lunch break, 10-minute break. Bannon's back. Judge is on the bench. Bannon actually didn't show up to this proceeding, so he's not back, but Judge Nichols is back on the bench. Bannon lawyer Corcoran is now up. He's going to be addressing the congressional trial subpoenas. And he says, sorry, Judge, those people who got our subpoenas, they have to show up here. The speech and debate immunity clause that protects them can't be weighed more heavily than the right to confront your witnesses under the Sixth Amendment. That physics was once considered absolute, but Einstein came along and he came up with the theory of relativity. And so the speech and debate clause immunity is also relative, is what he says. Judge Nichols is saying, well, what does Bannon want to elicit from these witnesses here? And Corcoran says, well, they want to ask Pelosi why she didn't appoint a full committee, 13 people instead of 9. I'd like to know the answer to that too. Why not? And why are there not 5 who are Republicans? Why not allow a ranking minority member committee on the committee? The jury should hear our idea based on the evidence. And we want to tell the jury what happened, and you can give them the legal framework. Corcoran turns over to the government now and talks about their motions. He says, they want to keep politics out of the case. But he says, let me explain something to you, Judge. Politics is an important part of this case from start to finish. We have to ask witnesses if politics played a role in their actions. He also wants to argue to the jury about whether the committee is properly composed, 9 people instead of 13. David Scone now, another lawyer, we know who he is. He is this fella down here. So we've got these, all 3 of these people are in court today. David Scone, we just heard from Corcoran and Costello. And so now we're back with David Scone. He addresses the issues. He was one of Trump's lawyers during the impeachment. He's talking about Bannon's request to get the DOJ to reveal memos on why it refused to prosecute Meadows and Scavino, right? They declined to prosecute them. Why? Relevant because whether Trump's invocation of the privilege in Bannon's case was the same or not in all 3 cases, he rewrote that. He argues it's relevant because Trump's letter invoking privilege was essentially the same in all 3 cases. He's arguing the D.C. Circuit ruling that Judge Nichols feels bound by does not bind him, and he's trying to distinguish cases. The judge is asking Bannon's lawyer about the apparent recent decision to testify. Bannon's lawyer says, Your Honor, we want to talk about his willingness to testify, right? He's willing to testify. Judge says, and should the trial be postponed as a result of this change in willingness? He says, well, there's no reason to have it start on Monday, Judge, with jury selection. This isn't a last-hour move by Bannon, okay? His hands were tied by Trump. And now Trump just untied him for the very first time. And that's what he told Congress, okay? Now, obviously, this was timing, right? Bannon's defense says, and Your Honor, for an entrapment by estoppel defense, the question is, did Bannon have a reasonable belief that internal DOJ memos gave him immunity? Bannon was relying on the official guidance from the U.S. government to not testify. That's his argument. He was relying on their memos. The issue is not whether Bannon was right, okay? He could have incorrectly been relying on them, but was it a reasonable belief? And that is a jury question. So they want to say to them, here's everything that he looked at and everything that we looked at. And because it's reasonable for him to believe that he wasn't required to testify, you shouldn't be able to prosecute him. Defense says it would be unreasonable for a layperson to read these memos and not believe they would apply based on his communication with the president. He says, honestly, I'm shocked that this is even a question. Look at those memos, he says. And I want to discuss the motion, he says, about the postponement of the trial because of the adverse publicity during the pre-trial proceedings. And the judge says, okay, well, I mean, if you push it back to October, okay, so let's say, for example, David, that I extend this to October. How do we know there's not going to be more hearings in October? Which he's right, there probably will be. He says, if the Boston Marathon bomber didn't get to move his trial, why is the publicity here worse? Well, that's easy, Judge. Because the Boston bomber didn't have a podium that almost insurrected America. Okay, it's pretty simple. Way worse. First of all, Joe Biden said this was worse than, I think, 9/11, right? And Pearl Harbor. So, yeah, this is a little bit worse than the Boston Marathon bomber, okay? Now, people died there, but they keep forgetting that happened in the J6 case. Well, they keep mistaking it. They keep saying Brian Sicknick was killed, but he wasn't. Ashley Babbitt was. So, okay. So the judge is going to say, it's the same thing, right? Now, Scone says this is a seminal event in the country, Judge. J6 stated purpose was to influence, the J6 committee's stated purpose was to influence as many people as possible. Why? Like, that's their stated goal. They're out there waging war in the court of public opinion. Why take a risk when fundamental rights are at issue? And what's the magic behind October, he says. What about August? Why can't we do it in August? Well, we picked 3 months. I mean, it's an arbitrary date. That would be the date we felt the prejudice would be sufficiently dissipated. And now you start to think, well, October, what's after October? November, have an election. Okay, so the trial starts in October. Maybe he's convicted. Sentencing would take place probably 30 days later after the conviction. He might go into custody that day if he is convicted. Interesting. Yeah. So that's longer than it would take. The government says Vaughn is up now. Vaughn. The USA says, even if these questions do go to the jury, the Congress members Bannon has subpoenas don't have relevant testimony that can't already go to the J6 chief counsel who's already going to be testifying. Now, so we're learning more about what's happening. So the prosecutors are going to be calling the January 6th committee's chief counsel, who's going to come in and explain the whole situation, right? Why the committee's valid, why the subpoenas were valid, and all of that. And he, of course, is going to be arguing that the judge and the courts, which are an entirely separate branch of government, they should be deferring to the legislative branch. And Pelosi and Schiff and all of the people who are on this committee, they're not needed because the chief counsel is just a fill-in for them, right? They don't need to come out and testify because the lawyer can do it all for them. But the judge says, yeah, but what about Scone's point? No magic to July 18th. Bannon has concerns about publicity and preparation. And Vaughn says, magic is that Bannon's the only one with a speedy trial right. The public has a speedy trial right too. Prosecutor says, yeah, but Bannon's a public figure. He purposely manufactured this, and his requested schedule suggests that none of this is credible. She's discussing Bannon's request for memos and decisions to prosecute, saying, no need to gild a lily, says the judge. So the prosecutor sits down. She's done. Bannon's counsel, Corcoran and Scone, they get short surrebuttals, which means they get sort of the last word here. We need to know what defenses we're going to have, says Scone. We need to know what defenses we're going to have, and we're going to have to map them out. We cannot, listen to this key phrase, we cannot provide effective assistance of counsel. Okay. He's setting this up for an appeal. Judge, if you're telling us like 1 week out from trial what our defenses are, you're not granting a continuance in light of all of these objections we've made. You're denying basically every one of our motions. We cannot provide effective assistance of counsel. This is this lawyer saying, we're going to lose this case because I can't do my job. And that's setting Steve Bannon up for an appeal. Bannon can go up to an appeals court and say, I'd like to overturn my conviction. My lawyer was ineffective. I didn't get proper legal representation. He tried his best, but because of the mechanisms that were put in place by the committee, by the DOJ, by the judge, I didn't get a fair shake because they tied my lawyer's hands. The judge says, all right, look, hold on a minute. The judge says, good Lord, you people are a pain in the butt. All right, I'm going to go and take a few minutes, some lunch to reflect on this stuff. So let's reconvene at 1:30. He's going to come back and issue some rulings. Fortunately for us, we can fast forward. U.S. Judge Nichols is back on the bench. He's ready to deliver some of these pretrial rulings. And then we're going to get to reaction. A number of the motions turn on three key issues. Mens rea, required to willfully make a default. Okay, mens rea is the mental state. We talk about crimes. We have two different components. They teach you this in law school, like your first day of criminal law, I think, that you've got two components of a criminal charge, a mens rea and an actus reus. Okay, these are fancy phrases. One says a guilty mind. The other is an action, right? You have to have a guilty mind before you steal the candy bar. I want that candy bar. And then you actually have to take it. Two things, 1 + 1 = 2. And so they're saying the first one starts with mens rea, the guilty mind, the mental state, required to willfully make a default. Did Bannon have that? Did he really think, I'm not going to show up because I'm intending to be a criminal? Number two, whether Bannon can present estoppel by entrapment claims. We talked a lot about that. That's the idea that Bannon's reliance on the official DOJ memoranda was sufficient to preclude him from any criminal charges. And then number three, whether Bannon can argue that the jury that the committee was improperly constituted. Which I like all three of those. Now, those are the three issues. The judge probably going to screw him on all three. What does it mean to make a willful default? In my view, the precedent is unequivocal. The government need only prove he acted deliberately and intentional. Okay, evil motive, not an ingredient. Advice of counsel is not a defense. Argument made are not applicable. These rulings are binding here. I have serious reservations with that holding. I'm bound by Machiavelli. And you cannot present evidence about the internal memos, okay? Roger says that's huge in my view. He's allowed to present evidence that he was not aware of. He is, however, allowed to present evidence he was not aware of return dates on subpoenas. Okay. So that he sort of didn't know when he was supposed to show up. He cannot argue that he was legally excused from complying with the subpoena, right? So that is a big blow to Steve. The argument is Bannon can't be prosecuted because he trusted the government. They put out documents. He relied on them. He can't make that argument. He can't submit any of that according to Roger here. Now, I'll pause on this for a quick minute. Now, Roger, and again, Roger's not here to sort of have a conversation with me, but he's saying things like, that's huge, right? That's huge. I think it is huge legally. From a legal observer's position, that's a big ruling. But from a practical perspective here, in the DC Circuit Court, I think Bannon's going to lose anyways, right? It really doesn't matter what any of these rulings say. He could have won this ruling and he's still going to lose this case. He could have won probably all of these rulings and he's probably still going to lose this case, right? I think there's virtually nothing that he can do because we saw what happened out of the Sussman case, right? If it's a group of DC jurors, they are 95% psycho left. Not like middle of the road, hey, Democrats, lunatic left. And we saw that in the Sussman trial. They deliberated for 37 minutes and then they needed to get back to their, whatever they're doing, whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but it was a strange thing. So you think Steve Bannon, who has a profile 1 million times bigger than Michael Sussman did, who's Darth Vader and Trump's the emperor, right? I mean, the whole thing, he's totally screwed. So, and I say that with a lot of optimism because Steve doesn't care. And apparently the Republicans, when they take over, they're just going to invalidate all of it. So it's who cares? So you're going to see a lot of legal commentary about this probably throughout the course of this trial. Oh, Bannon's in deep trouble. Oh, he lost another one. Oh, this is the end of the, this is whatever. Not really. I mean, it's probably a foregone conclusion at this point. His lawyers are already essentially setting up an appeal, right? As you said, we already heard from David. Basically, this is going to be an effective assistance of counsel case. They know they're going to lose an appeal anyways. But Roger makes a good point. Legally, it is a big blow, right? Legally, that's sort of the best outcome that I think that one of the best arguments that Steve had. Other than the committee is illegal, but the courts aren't going to do anything about that. Oh, it's such a scam. All right. Bannon cannot offer the internal DOJ memos. If they are relevant to showing he didn't think the return date was applicable to him, that might be able to come in, but I can't understand how that would be possible. No, it's not the case. That's a red herring here. If Bannon seeks to argue his failure to comply was because he didn't think the subpoena didn't apply to him, he can't do that. But if he wants to argue that some evidence led to his subjective belief that the return date was not operative, then he can draw an inference on that. Judge Nichols rules that entrapment by estoppel cannot go to the jury. Again, he says that's huge. None of the documents Bannon points to deals with that situation specifically. At best, he can draw inferences, but none of it applies. While the DOJ opinions might apply to similar situations, don't apply here. I won't instruct the jury on this defense. Okay, so Bannon loses that. Not going to make it into the jury instructions, and that's not good. You want the juror to see that and consider that. Now, the judge is discussing whether Bannon can present a very similar defense called public authority defense, saying that can be used where a law enforcement officer actually authorizes the defendant to commit the act. Former President Trump's not a federal official, and so not going to instruct the jury on that. Third major issue, to what extent the J6 composition can be challenged before the jury. Can Bannon get up there and say, like I do here every stinking show, that this committee is a garbage scam? No. He says they are not relevant to an element of the defense. They are, at best, can be characterized as defenses and can be waived. Can Bannon present this evidence to the jury? For the most part, it's going to be excluded. Bannon has waived most of these arguments, failed to make them to the committee. A decent respect for the House of Representatives required that he state his reasons for noncompliance. Another reason he's excluding this evidence is the question of the House rules is a legal question. Questions I must resolve as a legal matter, rules at a minimum, ambiguous, and the House has indicated its view of those rules, so I must defer to the House's interpretation of its rules. You see? Do you see? That doesn't say that this is legally constituted at all. It doesn't say that at all. So you're going to get a bunch of just, jello brains out there who are screaming from the rooftop that Judge Nichols said that the committee is legally constituted. Not what he says at all. He says the committee rules are ambiguous. They've indicated their interpretation of those rules, and so I have to defer to them. Roger Parloff. And this says to allow the jury to say the House rules mean something that other than what the House says would create a separation of powers issue. The entire House has on multiple occasions ratified that the committee is properly constituted, okay? The committee said it's legal, therefore it's legal, even though, according to their own rules, it's not legal. And as I've explained many times, this is a House of Representatives, which means it's supposed to be a representative body. So when they say, and the entire House passes the rules and says 13, it's 8 and 5, that, or whatever the numbers are, they have to follow those rules in order to make the representation valid. And they have not done that. Now, we go back to Roger. Bannon cannot challenge whether the J6 has proper legislative purpose. That's a question of law, not of fact. Okay, whether they are conducting this as a pseudo grand jury committee or whether this is a legally constituted lawful legislative body, it's not for the jurors to decide. For the judge to decide. And he's saying he's going to defer over to the House. Side issue pops up about the phone call and the metadata, and it says neither side is seeking to use any of the stuff from Robert Costello. Bannon's motion to not read the indictment to the jury. We have, let's see. Government's motion to preclude presenting evidence of penalties is granted, so they're not going to talk about the penalties there. Judge is not going to allow Bannon to bring in evidence that he complied with other subpoenas in the past. They're discussing Bannon's request for internal memos about the declinations. Judge says not relevant. Judge also grants the House motions to quash the 16 subpoenas to Congress. So Bannon's subpoenas are now quashed. None of those people are showing up to trial, so they're done. Finds the House and the speech and debate clause protects all of them. protects their documents, protects their ability to show up and testify. The committee's motivations are all out of bounds. To the extent that he seeks other evidence from them, that evidence is not relevant. So Steve Bannon is just losing. Boom, boom, just losing every one of these. Bannon has suggested that if he can't subpoena these people, he may move to suppress the indictment. Fine, but Bannon's going to have to show that these people had evidence relevant at trial, which seems unlikely. Now, there's a motion for a continuance. The judge says, in my view, jury selection is the correct way to deal with publicity. So we just pick better jurors who are not going to be impacted by all of this publicity, and saying, well, I see no reason now for extending this case any further. As for the recent letter from Trump and Bannon in their decision to testify, it could come in. I could allow those documents to come in, but it's a discrete issue. We'll have to take it up later at the time. So the judge is done. Scone wants to speak, and he wants a little bit of clarification. He says, look, the question at trial is really simple. Did he fail to appear deliberately? Was it a mistake, inadvertence? Did he not believe the return date was the return date? Scone says, well, what can his lawyer testify about? Bannon. Can Bannon get up there and Bannon's lawyer get up there and tell him that he told him not to show up? If Costello told him the return date is no longer 10/14, he could testify to that. Not saying that happened, but that kind of thing. So Scone says, well, what's the point of going to trial if there are no defenses? It's a good question. I need to make a decision here, he says. And that's it. Long story short, says Roger, Judge Nichols really poured Bannon out. Very little apparent defense left. No postponement of trial. Bannon counsel Scone seemed a little shell-shocked. Roger says, I'm done. Yeah. And that's basically the read on that. Now, it was pretty bad. I think every single issue was lost, which is not to be expected. Now, I know a lot of people will sort of throw shade at the judge. Not sure the judge is to blame. I think it's sort of DC. This guy actually was appointed by Donald Trump. And sometimes when this happens, you see judges who overcorrect to some degree. So like a good example of this would be, sometimes you'll get defense attorneys that become judges and you think, oh, great, they used to be a defense attorney. So they're going to know that a bunch of these cops are lying scum. And when they get up on the bench, they see those same cops who are lying scum. We know they know that they're lying scum, and they still don't do anything about it, right? They actually support them, and they support the prosecution because they like their jobs and because they don't want to seem overly biased. They don't want to seem like they're in the can for the other side. So you take a situation like this, right? Obviously, I've never practiced in front of this judge, and I presume the best of him. But you might, some people might make those determinations. They might say, oh, he was appointed by Trump, so he's probably going to be extra hard on some of the Trumpers out there. And maybe that's the case, maybe not. Honestly, I think this judge's hands are completely tied because of what this committee is doing. It's a legislative body. This judge is a traditional conservative judge. He's going to honor the separation of powers and not exceed the scope and go do what this committee is doing. So his hands are tied. He's just the judge, right? The DOJ is really to blame here, as is the congressional committee, because these are the two, like, this is not supposed to happen, right? The different branches of government are supposed to push back. This is the whole concept of separation of powers. Remember in civics or social studies or whatever, we learned that we had checks and balances, and that different branches of government could basically pull the trigger or flip the switch on another branch and say, hey, you're encroaching on my powers. You're not allowed to do that. Those are mine, right? This is what James Madison and many other people were talking about with these three co-equal branches that were not supposed to unify. They were all supposed to push back against each other so that they all maintain their power. It's supposed to be this beautiful balance. Well, what we have now is a legislative body called Congress, called the J6 Committee, which is essentially acting like a grand jury, like a prosecuting agency, which is not their function. That's the executive branch function. They have usurped that. And the executive branch, because it's being run by a demented, poor, elderly, abused person who is wrecking America, they're okay with this happening because it serves their political ends, right? It helps them defeat their political enemies. So you've got these two really nefarious actors colluding, and they are prosecuting their political opponents, and the courts can't do anything about it because it's got the DOJ and the legislative branch. There's nothing they can do about it. So this judge is just totally tied. as far as I can tell. Now, those were the updates, and my goodness, that took a lot longer than I thought. But here is, I think we already listened to Zoe Bannon talking about that. Did we listen to Zoe? Did we listen to Zoe? I can't remember. Let's just listen to her again. Gosh. All right, here it is.
Congresswoman, let me just start with that news about Steve Bannon that we're learning this morning. Will Bannon testify before your committee, and what specific questions might you have for him?
Well, we got the letter around midnight from his lawyer saying that he would testify, and we have wanted him to testify. So the committee, of course, has not yet had a chance to discuss it, but I expect that we will be hearing from him, and there are many questions that we have for him.
Would it be a public hearing, or would it be behind closed doors?
Can we see? Can we hear it?
Ordinarily, we do depositions. This goes on for hour after hour after hour. We want to get all our questions answered, and you can't do that in a live format.
Okay, so it goes on for hours and hours and hours. And thank you, K. Bean, for telling me that we didn't listen to her. I got all sidetracked. I lost track. Goes on for hours and hours and hours, like a trial. Oh, yeah, like a trial, like a public hearing. But they don't want to do that. They only want to clip the material that serves them. And so this Zoe Lofgren is now going to say, when we do, in fact, talk to Steve, it's only going to be what we want you to see. Okay, it's not going to be the reality. It's only everything that goes through our filter.
You heard from another key witness this week, White House counsel Pat Cipollone, who sat with you.
We're going to come back to Pat Cipollone in a minute. Let's take a listen to Swalwell here. Here's Swalwell, who is wondering, or is asked a question about Steve. Swalwell was responsible for all sorts of, goofy stuff with Chinese spies, making Bang Bang with Fang Fang, I think, and stinking up all sorts of TV studios. But here he is now. He has some experience interviewing Steve Bannon. Here's what he said.
I wonder what you think Steve Bannon might be able to contribute in the way of insights to that particular piece of this conversation, and what his willingness to testify now signals to you.
I can only tell you, I've interviewed Steve Bannon before. I was one of the lead investigators for the Russia prosecution for Bannon's interview. I would expect zero. Absolutely nothing. This guy was like interviewing the Joker. He's maniacal. He's insane. And it was a frustrating hours-long interview where we did not learn very much. He had actually upset the Republicans. It was one of the only things that united us during the whole Russia investigation was how much he upsetted the Republicans. He was joking around with his lawyers. They kept trying to tell him to take it seriously. I would not expect very much. I don't think a leopard like Bannon changes its spots. And so, again, if the commission knows more than I know, that's great. They should proceed. But I would proceed very, very carefully with this guy.
And honestly, like, that's the worst when some, how frustrating that is, right? When you've dealt with people like that, when you're like, this is really serious. And you're like, no, it's not, you idiot. It's the worst. And especially these people, they sit up there on their little, rounded bureaucratic bench up there, and they look down at everybody and their microphones, and they're scolding down at everybody. And you listen to me, I'm smart now because I got elected and I'm up here. And these people are really not that intelligent, obviously.
By the way, Alicia, he doesn't have an executive. The president doesn't have an executive privilege to waive with Steve Bannon.
Right. He knows that. Donald Trump knows that. It's just the same argument they.
Okay, so I don't know who that is. I've never seen her before. She knew?
I unfortunately with that.
Again, I think it's a power play by Trump, believing that he has, a waiver that he doesn't, and that he can release people and no one else can, including the courts. That's what I fear this is.
Okay, so there is Stinky Eric Swalwell, his reaction, and of course, Bannon. Yeah, right. Bannon's got them all sort of flummoxed. They're saying, oh, shoot, this guy's going to testify. I can guarantee you the last thing that they want to have happen is Steve Bannon to get out there in front of the American people in one of those stupid scam hearings. We'd watch that one. Holy moly, we'd watch that one. Yeah, if Liz Cheney and Adam Raskin and Benny Thompson bring in Steve Bannon, they sit him right there in the middle of that table, right where Cassidy Hutchinson was. Yeah, we'd stream that one for sure, because it would be actually useful. It wouldn't be a scripted teleprompter high school book report. Ridiculous. Now, here is Scone, and this is right after court. He comes walking out. And I wanted to highlight for you that quick sort of statement. Remember, he said previously in the Twitter thread from Roger that there was a high likelihood that this might be ineffective assistance of counsel, saying, we might have to go to the Court of Appeals on this thing because of what this judge has done.
Not much much to say really. Just say we certainly got some clarity in his rulings today, and the trial scheduled for Monday. So we'll be back Thursday for pretrial conference, and then trial scheduled for Monday.
Do you have any clarity of why Steve Bannon wasn't here today? Just why he didn't decide?
Because it was purely a legal issue, so the rules exempt you from. He's come in the past, but the rules exempt you if you want to.
Why didn't he come? Yeah.
Why didn't Bannon come to this very important proceeding? Why wasn't he here? She says. I don't know. Well, he doesn't have to come. Why didn't he come, though? Well, I don't know.
Any reason, any comment or thoughts on Justice Clark's interview with the FBI?
Very interesting. I think there's a lot more to find out about that. That's all I can tell you.
How do you
So I couldn't hear.
Steve feeling?
I don't know. I haven't spoken. This kind of time frame. Find out what the judge says. Very interesting. I think there's a lot more to find out about that.
I couldn't hear what the
That's
question
all I
was.
can tell you.
How do you feel about Judge Nichols' rulings today?
He's
Question, how do you feel about Judge Nichols' rulings today?
the judge. That's why they have a court of appeals. He's a judge, and you have to respect what the judge says.
So what's next?
Prepare for trial.
Are you ready?
As I said today, I don't think anybody really can provide effective assistance of counsel on this kind of time frame, finding out a week before the trial starts what defenses altogether will be permitted in the case and so on. But again, he's the judge. That's why we have a court of appeals.
That's why we have a court of appeals. He's the judge. I don't think anybody can really prepare for. She asked, "Are you prepared?" Well, I don't think anybody can be prepared, honestly. I just learned what the defenses are. We've got a week until trial, and okay, he's the judge. That's why we have court of appeals, though.
How is Steve feeling?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to him.
How does your inability to now subpoena Speaker Pelosi and other House members affect your defense, and will it impact the fairness of the trial?
Absolutely. I think, first of all,
How about those subpoenas? Does that impact your ruling or your ability to provide a defense if you can't subpoena Pelosi and all those
great
people?
irony that Bannon had privilege invoked by the former president. He believed that was valid. And I think the letter from former President Trump now makes that quite clear, that he did invoke it and believed it was valid. And so he's brought up on criminal charges now for respecting that privilege, but the members of Congress won't appear. I also don't quite understand how it is that the extraneous stuff, in other words, the statements to the press showing why they were after Bannon and all of that, isn't relevant, or the book deals. Remember, Raskin and Schiff have written books with their conclusions already about what happened on January 6th. I think they have an interest in making sure that the committee's findings are consistent with that. But anyway, that's all I've got. I've got to catch a flight.
Do you think Steve Bannon's going to testify in front of the committee before trial next week?
I don't know. He's certainly indicated his willingness to. Once his hands were untied, he stood on the same position that he said from the start. From the start, he said he's willing to comply if they just resolve the privilege issue, which he feels he's bound by, which is lawyer.
So he says Bannon might actually testify, and that clip cut out early. But yeah, that's very interesting, right? They put him on there, and he just explains his theory. Now, as I said, okay, everybody in that jury panel is probably going to know who Steve Bannon is. And once one person in the jury knows, the rest of them are going to know. And they're all very likely going to be very, very dark blue Democrats who are going to do everything humanly possible to convict him because they hate him and they think that Donald Trump insurrected America. So that trial is coming up. We know it starts next week. Judge didn't continue it out at all. I've already emailed over the court clerks. Actually, I have not. Yes. So I have to submit. I think, I'll go ahead and submit. We have the emails of everybody from the last show that we did. It's the same DC Circuit Court, but I probably should just go submit the official form anyway. So I'll go do that. But I've already got, I think the transcript should be coming in hot on this one, maybe tonight or tomorrow. And I'm going to try to get into that same cadence where we can get the transcripts as quickly as we can, provided that, of course, the parties are paying for them as well. But we're going to gear up for that. Now, that is all going to start next week, and we're going to be doing, I think, the same show, the same thing we did for Michael Sussman. We'll get the transcripts, and we'll unpack them at the conclusion of the day, reading through them quickly. Now, this was the update out of Steve Bannon. We have some more clips now, because remember Zoe Lofgren, and I know this is going to be a little bit painful for everybody here, but we got 3 clips of Zoe Lofgren. I know! But she drew the short end of the stick, man. Kinzinger went out last weekend. I think Cheney had the weekend before that. It's like chores. It's like they have like a magnet on the refrigerator back at the Congressional House snack room. And they just say, okay, move the dinosaur over to you. Zoe, move it over to you. It's Monday. It's your week. Get out there. So they moved it over, and now she's in charge. We left off last week talking about Pat Cipollone. Remember Pat Cipollone, former White House lawyer? We dove into him. He worked with Donald Trump, went to Fordham University. He was somebody who was the White House counsel during January 6th. And so he didn't get a subpoena until after Cassidy Hutchinson botched the testimony. Cassidy Hutchinson was this woman here who told us a lot about the alleged Trump assault in the limo after January 6th. And so as soon as she was done testifying, the committee sent us a letter over to Cipollone. He agreed to have an interview with them on Friday. Zoe Lofgren came out after the interview was over, and she explained to us what this was all about. Now, I was shocked by these clips, to be honest. I mean, these are so mind-numbingly painful. It's amazing to me that they get away with this. It's amazing to me, like Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper, these two guys, they know better, right? But they're just allowing this type of garbage to fly on their networks, which is why nobody watches CNN. So here, let's play this here. Here is Zoe Lofgren. Okay, remember, just to buttress this up a little bit. Let's back up on this just a little bit very briefly. Remember, there was a big question from Cassidy Hutchinson, this woman, about whether or not there was this assault that took place in the limo. Two things happened. One, she was saying that there was an assault that took place on January 6th when Donald Trump was literally trying to go to the Capitol. That was all denied, all rebutted by Anthony Guglielmi, Robert Engel, several different people from the Secret Service said that never happened. Donald Trump didn't actually swing at a Secret Service person or grab a clavicle or anything, right? That was sort of lie number one, we'll call that. The Trump assault. Lie number one. Lie number two was about this handwritten note. Eric Hirschman, White House lawyer, was the person who, according to him, wrote this note. Cassidy Hutchinson said, I wrote the note. That's lie number two. Okay, so this lady's just a bona fide liar or a poison pill or whatever. Secret Service, as we said, the three people in the vehicle, Bobby Engel, President Trump, and the limo driver, the source said, both agents are saying, quote, that did not happen. Okay, so she's a liar. Now, the committee has come out and they've sort of tried to come to her aid and say that Tony Ornato, the person who is at the Secret Service, is a liar. And the list goes on and on and on. But let's break this down here now. Okay, so Zoe Lofgren, we know that Pat Cipollone got interviewed last week. They're asking her questions about this. And here is what Wolf gets out of her when she talks to CNN. This is just unbelievable. Pull this up here. Here's Zoe Lofgren. She's on the committee. Okay, we don't hear a lot from her, but she is on this fake committee. Let's listen.
Former President Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, just wrapped up his interview with the January 6th Select Committee, and it lasted more than 7 hours.
Wow.
Joining us now is one of the members, key members of the Select Committee, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of California. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. I know there are restrictions on what you can and cannot say.
Okay, so this is a stupid rule that they've imposed on themselves, right? I'm gonna invite you on here to talk about this. Now, pay close attention to what she's actually saying here, but there's a subroutine that's also being processed. She uses this rule that she can't talk about stuff when she doesn't want to answer questions. But when she wants to answer something, she's openly and willing to talk about it. And I sort of noticed this as we were listening. But let's go back to the question. Pat Cipollone just got done talking to you people for 8 hours. What did he say? And remember, Pat Cipollone can fill in a lot of these gaps. He can help explain what actually happened because he's the White House lawyer, right? He can tell us, is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? Is the Secret Service a liar? I mean, you were there. Did you hear any of these things? Can you corroborate any of this evidence for us?
Based on what you heard during all this testimony today, but what did the committee learn from Cipollone's testimony today? Can you share in general terms what you learned?
Well, the committee rules don't allow us to disclose testimony
without
a vote
wait.
of the committee, and we have not had that vote. But I will say Mr. Cipollone did appear voluntarily and answer a whole variety of questions.
Good.
He did not contradict the testimony of other witnesses.
Did not contradict the testimony of other witnesses. Well, that's a new way to say something, isn't it?
And I think we did learn a few things, which we will be rolling out in the hearings to come.
Playing video clips.
I think it was a grueling day for all involved.
Very grueling,
Mr.
yeah.
Cipollini and the staff and the members, but it was well worth it.
Well worth it. So Pat Cipollone comes in, and the question that you might have is, well, gosh, I would love to know if he confirmed or denied or gave us any clarity on some of the most important questions that we have, Zoe. Can you share anything with us? Well, he did not contradict anything, so that's good, right? Here's another clip. Now let's listen to Wolfie on this one. Wolfie's going to say, hold on a minute.
So can we assume that he confirmed what we heard in that really powerful, explosive testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson?
Did he confirm it?
Not contradicting is not the same as confirming.
What?
All right, explain the difference.
What?
Well,
that's true. Yeah, not contradicting is not the same. That is true.
He could say so-and-so was wrong, which he did not say.
He didn't voluntarily come out. So like Pat Cipollone didn't show up and say, hey, Zoe, your witness, Cassidy Hutchinson's a liar. He didn't do that, right? Let's listen to this lady.
All right, explain the difference.
Well, he could say so-and-so was wrong, which he did not say. There were things that he might not be present for, or in some cases couldn't recall with precision. My sense was that he, as I say, he did appear voluntarily. I think he was candid with the committee.
Did he confirm?
He was careful in his answers. And I believe that he was honest in his answers.
I know you can't get into specifics, but can you say if you learned any significant new information from him?
I think a few things, yes. And
no.
When we put this all together, I mean, obviously Tuesday is going to be an important day for the committee, and I think the country, connecting various dots and the hearings after. We've gained some additional insight into the actual day, January 6th. So,
got some more insight.
Yes,
wow,
I
good.
think this was worthwhile.
Yeah, I think it was worthwhile. Unbelievable. Okay, so Wolf just let her slide on that, right? Just let her slide like a little. I mean, like, I try not to drop profanity on here, but man, he bitched out big time on that. Major bitch move. Let's play this one more time so you can he just let it slide. Listen.
Not
assume that he confirmed what we heard in that really powerful, explosive testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson?
Not contradicting is not the same as confirming.
All right, explain the difference.
Well, he could say so-and-so was wrong.
Just let it slide.
He did not say.
Just let it slide. Like such a weenie. Unbelievable that he would do that. I mean, he calls himself a news anchor. He calls himself a journalist. And you don't even have the cojones. You don't even have the stones to ask a follow-up question on that. What an absolute joke. All right, so now here, Jake Tapper's not any better. Jake Tapper is going to do the same thing again. Same thing. And here she gets asked the same question, and he's just gonna let it slide too, because they have no cojones.
Former Mark Meadows aide Cassidy Hutchinson testified that Pat Cipollone said that something along the lines of they would get charged with every crime imaginable if Trump went up to the Capitol. Two sources tell CNN that the committee did not ask Pat Cipollone whether he had said that. Is that true? And if so, why wouldn't you ask him that?
Yeah. So at least Tapper asks the question. Why wouldn't you ask them that? All of America wants to know the answer to this question. Why would you not ask him that? We have CNN people who say that you didn't ask him. Why? That the committee did not ask Pat Cipollone whether he had said that. Is that true? And if so, why wouldn't you ask him that?
We never call in witnesses to corroborate other witnesses or to give their reaction to other witnesses.
Did you hear what she just said?
We never call in witnesses to corroborate other witnesses.
We never call in witnesses to corroborate other witnesses. Okay, I guess then what's the point of any of this? There is no point.
Or to give their reaction to other witnesses.
Unbelievable. So they're just allowing it to happen. Now, you can see those 3 clips back to back. We have Jake Tapper gets a little into it. Why wouldn't you ask? We all want to know. Well, we don't corroborate our witnesses. Well, that's very convenient for you. It's very easy to write fictional narratives when you don't have to corroborate anything. Very easy when there's no facts involved. What a joke. Okay. So that, my friends, is it on the update from Pat Cipollone. We have one final topic to get to, and this one was a bombshell that came out today. My goodness. We've got a lot of activity here. Bonnie Speck over on the locals chat says, I've actually seen CNN move a little bit to the middle. Yeah, they came out and they said that they were going to do that. They said specifically that, Brian Stelter is getting a little bit nervous over there at CNN, because they're saying that we're kind of done with your liberal garbage over here, which is a good call because America's pretty much tired of it as well, as we can see evidently. All right, so we have one final story. Now, this was late breaking this afternoon, and so I just want to run through this, but it's all hot off the press over at the gatewaypundit.com if you want to take a look at this story. Now, remember, we have a whole section here on counters to the big main arguments that exist that have been proffered forward by the J6 Scam Committee. For a long time now, we've been just assembling these things. Legal arguments about the legal arguments about this being a political question, about presidential standards of care. We've unpacked the Electoral Count Act and how that works. We've talked about evidentiary objections and problems with this committee. We've talked about all sorts of arguments, conspiracies, House deciding. We've talked about double standards that exist, about election integrity, elector pressure, Capitol building trespass, and so on. The massive amounts of hyperbole, right? Worst attack on democracy since the Civil War, blah, blah, blah. Now, we have this one. Law enforcement being complicit in the activities of the January 6 riots, protests. Here, the Capitol Hill story comes over from the Gateway Pundit. You can see huge capital letters. They lied and we have the proof. Highly sensitive DOJ January 6 documents leaked to the Gateway Pundit. Okay, they got the documents. FBI confidential human source infiltrated the Proud Boys, ran an FBI operation on January 6 and reported that the Proud Boys were innocent. So July 11th, this came out. Of course, that is today. And I have a copy of this report. This is the individual who they say was the undercover confidential human source. Here is the full report over from the Gateway Pundit. So let's pull this open here and piece this together just a little bit. In fact, let me do this first. And I'm going to save this right here. And then what I'm going to do, oh my goodness, what is going on over here? Okay. We're going to open up this in a different thing so I can mark it up a little bit. All right, there it is. So now we can get our big red pen out and mark this puppy up. So this is, you can see, this is the FBI CHS document, CHS reporting document, official record. And so this was apparently leaked over to the Gateway Pundit. So let's tighten this up just a little bit there. Okay. Here, right, the date of contact. This is all coming out of Kansas City, 12/3/2020. It is a CHS reporting document, all unclassified. Type of contact, in person. Source reporting is now being detailed here. So this is submitted by some FBI agent, right, who's working with the confidential human source. Somebody's undercover, the FBI is working with them. And so the FBI agent is writing this report to summarize their interactions with this confidential human source. FBI agent writes, CHS reported that there would be a Proud Boys march for Trump in Washington on Saturday, December 12th. There was at least one pickup truck and others. CHS stated there are no discussions. See this? The CHS stated there are no discussions of pre-planned violence, but at least one member mentioned looking forward to, quote, cracking Antifa skulls. Okay, Antifa skulls, right? Cracking Antifa skulls in self-defense if given the opportunity. So you see right out of the gates, the confidential human source saying Proud Boys, not violent, no discussions of pre-planned violence. Only violence is cracking Antifa skulls, not insurrecting America, right? So kind of a different situation here. We have another date of report. That was from 1203. Okay, so we fast forward now to 1229. Uh-oh, we're getting a lot closer to January 6th. Confidential human source stated that the rally in D.C. on the 6th should be a concern, right? So this is somebody embedded with the Proud Boys who is now communicating to the FBI, right? And we've known this, that the FBI had informants. They probably had FBI agents there who were walking around in the Capitol building as plainclothes officers, right? But we don't know who they are. We do know that they had confidential human sources here. CHS shared screenshots of a 4chan channel called Poll. 4chan is a very good hacker, very smart gentleman. And he hacked Hunter Biden's iPhone this morning. We talked all about that on our morning walk and talk for about 20 minutes of disgusting nefariousness from the first family. So here he says individuals were calling for a civil war on the 6th. Not the Proud Boys. These are people on the 4chan channel called Poll, which is the politics channel. One stated a bunch of Trump supporters are bringing guns to D.C. A major crapstorm is bound to ensue between the police and thousands of unlawfully carrying Trump supporters. How will this play out? CHS, so he's sending that over, right? Sharing screenshots. And he stated that to the FBI agent. He also says the CHS stated there was a lot of talk on Poll and the Donald. Normal conservatives are talking about concealed carrying at the rally, and that is needed to save America. Okay, so that's coming up here. Now, conversations taking place on 4chan and Reddit. Bunch of Trump supporters are bringing guns, is what he said. So it doesn't connect it to the Proud Boys, doesn't say that they're doing it. This is not evidence of seditious conspiracy. This is a confidential human source reading internet forums and posting stuff that's happening on internet forums to the FBI. Wow. All right. He says here, this is another photograph. All threads are getting 300 replies. And he's sharing, go to the Donald.win. There's going to be a 1 million+ turnout. We're going to be unstoppable. 4chan thread, right? Here's another one. Civil War on the 6th, another 4chan thread. Boards.4chan. How will this play out, he says. It's going to be an S-storm. A bunch of Trump supporters are bringing guns. And he sent, this looks like it's a text message from this confidential human source to the FBI. Says, hey, FBI, a bunch of Trump supporters are coming. How will this play out? And the FBI responds from whoever redacted is, we don't know, says the DC police are either going to do their job and remove the obvious foreign provocateurs, such as Antifa, from our capital, or they deserve to be considered part of Antifa. Okay, so this is actually, these are actually the 4chan threads, right? So this is redacted. We don't know what that says, but these are the actual 4chan threads. So these aren't connected, as far as I can tell, to any one specific user, unless they can identify this 4chan user as an actual individual, but 4chan is anonymous. But I think you can log in and get a permanent ID, but I'm not sure. So here, right, these are all 4chan posts. These aren't tech. I mean, these are texts, but these are screenshots of 4chan posts. I want to go. Who wants to go to DC with me? So this CHS is just literally taking pictures off of the internet. Okay, not a big deal. Another report comes out, date of contact 12/29. Synopsis of this. It's an update on the DC rally. And here, another contact on 1/4. What's this? Another update. But this is a redacted update. We can't see what that's about. FBI tells us that the CHS was tasked with meeting with blank redacted in DC on January 6th. So we see this. The confidential human source was going to meet with somebody. We don't know who that was. I'd love to know who that was. Ray Epps, Sergeant at Arms, Muriel Bowser. Who are they meeting with over there? I have no idea. They redacted it. Can't see what that is. No additional reports on 12/29. 1/4 is the date of the contact. 1/5 is another date of contact. Here, let's see what this is all about. Looks like they're going to be doing some tracking on this. tracking different activity. CHS has a direct placement and access with the Proud Boys. He's going to be voluntarily traveling to D.C. with other Proud Boys to attend the rally in J6. So they go to Kansas City. They find the CHS. They find out that he's going to go to D.C. They enlist him. CHS has direct placement and access to the Proud Boys. The CHS is voluntarily traveling to D.C. to attend the rally. FBI, they have, oh my gosh. CHS is traveling with other Proud Boy members to attend the rally. FBI blank and FBI blank have full field investigations on subjects blank, redacted, and the CHS was tasked to make contact with those two subjects. Undercover FBI informants. FBI WF was notified, and FBI WF ASAC, redacted, of the CT and the critical incident management for approval for CHS travel on January 4th. No handlers are planning to travel to DC. So this CHS, they're just going to shove him on a plane, follow him around. They're inventorying it. Okay, they're logging this where he's going. Confidential human source now, we've got a reporting. A collaborative source, most of whose reporting has been corroborated, stated on the following of January 5th. Okay, so now this date of contact is 1/5. This is being reported on 1/6. Let's see what this says. The confidential human source is reporting the following. Question: what individuals or groups are threatening violence in response to the arrest of Tarrio? Redacted. Can't see any of that, right? Still can't see any of that. And remember, Enrique Tarrio was arrested the day before. Actually, I think he was arrested on the 5th. And Enrique Tarrio was not even in D.C. on January 6th. Enrique Tarrio is the leader of the Proud Boys. We have him here on our mind map. And so let's go over to the Proud Boys saga. Here, the Proud Boys, we have them under the actual J6 crimes. And this is Enrique Tarrio, if you remember. He was charged with seditious conspiracy. So we go back over to our document. And that's here. It says, what groups are threatening violence in response to this? And the CHS says there are no plans for violence. See that? No plans for violence right there. CHS stated that there is speculation that Enrique is released in exchange for a deal to curb violence. CHS stated the plan remained the same and only violence will be self-defense from Antifa or other leftist groups. It's weird. It doesn't sound like a group of violent, seditious conspirators, does it? It looks like it's a group of people who are planning on defending themselves against Antifa or other leftist groups. And in fact, the confidential human source is reporting that to the FBI on January 5th. They say, what groups or individuals are the target of threats of violence of Tarrio? He says, none. None. No violence. What political or social events related to January 6th would incite or inspire an attack by extremists? Redacted. We don't know. CHS stated the only violence at the rally would be started by leftist groups. Do you see this? The confidential human source, the guy that the FBI trusts to be embedded with the Proud Boys, that the FBI trusts to travel to J6, is reporting the Proud Boys have no intention of violence at all. The only violence is going to be started by leftist groups. The rally attendees would only resort to violence to defend themselves. This is literally the embedded asset within the FBI reporting this. What weapons or tactics will the violent extremists use to evade detection? And he says, well, rally participants use Telegram and other communications platform, but the main reason of using these applications is to avoid leftist group detection, not law enforcement. Their own assets are saying Proud Boys aren't violent. They're not trying to evade law enforcement. None of that is relevant. Here on January 6th now, the day of the big event. This was entered on January 7th, but this report comes out on J6. Now, we're at page 15. This is where it starts to get good. Here, this report comes out. Confidential human source that is a collaborative source with direct and indirect access, most of whose reporting has been corroborated by another person, stated the following on January 6th. Okay, so this is the confidential source, first person account, communicating this to the FBI on January 6th. The source stated the Proud Boys were not involved in, nor did they inspire the breaking of the barriers at the U.S. Capitol building. Do you see this here? January 6th. confidential source trusted by the FBI says the Proud Boys were not involved in, nor did they inspire the breaking of the barriers at the U.S. Capitol. CHS described the scene as the crowd doing it as, quote, a herd mentality, and that it was not organized. The crowd was shouting, "Stop the vote." They made their way into the Capitol building. There were no overt threats of violence made at that time. CHS stated that the KC Proud Boys in attendance at the rally entered the Capitol building 30 minutes after the building was breached to help de-escalate Trump supporters and law enforcement. Proud Boys came in 30 minutes after the fact. And you know what? That matches a lot of the video footage that we saw, right? We saw people walking into the building, walking in after the police tapped other police on the shoulders and said, let him in. People walked in. Once the KC Proud Boys entered the building, they told people to stop acting like anarchists and leave. KCB told the people to start bagging trash from where the trash cans were thrown at law enforcement, along with a woman who was saying the same thing to protesters. KCB grabbed an individual by the shoulders to stop him from throwing a chair at law enforcement. KCB told protesters to stop at the doors of the House of Representatives and that their voice was heard and it was time to go. A law enforcement officer gave a thumbs up to a KCBP as they were trying to clear the area of people trying to fight law enforcement. They were the good guys. No one from KCBP were involved with a battery of law enforcement officer, nor did anyone damage property in the Capitol building. KCBP then went back to a rental house and adhered to the curfew in place. Confidential human source stated that law enforcement seemed grateful as the KCBP ushered individuals out of the building. One member of the KCBP told an older, hefty white law enforcement officer that the Proud Boys de-escalated downstairs. They are clearing out. And the FBI knew this, right? Like, this is not me. This is the FBI's report. I didn't write this report. They wrote it. This is their source. They trusted this source. They've been working with this source for a long time. They started working with him back in December, as far as we know, from this document. Way before anybody was even contemplating January 6th. Before it was even an idea in Nancy Pelosi's eyeball. Here, this is how this now continues to devolve, right? Where do we leave off? We fast forward now. It's still January 6th. Synopsis of this update is about the Stop the Steal rally. Confidential human source reported that blank did not attend the Stop the Steal rally based on recently made Twitter posts, so still feeding them information. Confidential human source, this comes out on the 8th, the date of the report, or the date of the contact is on the 7th, the day after. CHS, a collaborative source with direct knowledge, attached photographs of the rally on 1/6, provided 5 videos of the crowd approaching the Capitol building, which are attached to the package and stored here. Pursuant to the guidance from the FBI, potential prosecution is forthcoming on individuals who unlawfully entered the building. The CHS self-initiated travel to attend the rally with members of the KCBP. He notified the handling agent prior to his travel to make contact with somebody who's redacted while there. According to the CHS, 30 minutes after the barriers were compromised, the CHS, along with the KCBP, entered to de-escalate, remove protesters, and assist law enforcement. CHS stated that he told people to start bagging trash, and they threw picked up the trash from the empty trash cans. According to CHS, he grabbed an individual by the shoulder who attempted to throw the chair. The CHS engaged in relevant conduct, they say, to assist law enforcement and remove people from the building in order to help restore order. They were in there for a known period of time. The public was not at risk because of their conduct, and the CHS is extremely receptive to the FBI direction and admonishments. Okay, so what this is saying is that this person is in the pocket of the FBI, right? This person will do whatever they say. You say jump, they say how high. Submitted by so on and so forth, all redacted. Now, we've got some more documents here. This came over from an individual named Timothy Langan. He's a special agent in charge of this. And he writes over to Stephen McAllister, who is the U.S. attorney out of Kansas. He says, all right, here, U.S. attorney, This is a letter about the unauthorized criminal activity here of this confidential human source. Pursuant to guidance from the domestic terror organization at the FBI, the CHS initiated travel with me, notified the handling agent prior to the move. According to the CHS, 30 minutes after the security breach, they went in to assist law enforcement, right? And reiterating what they told them there. Pursuant, whenever a notification occurs. Yeah, so they're basically notifying the attorney's office so that they don't get charged with crimes, right? Don't charge the confidential human source. He's one of us. We fast forward to the date of contact on the 13th now. Same guy. He links to an article from the Wall Street Journal. Looks like how a Trump mob overtook the Capitol. Crowd responded, yes, take it. So it looks like he identified somebody named Billy and put their phone number in there. So he sent him an article and said, that's Billy. He sent him another article, looks like on the 14th. They debriefed this CHS, referencing the riots. The CHS was admonished for entering the Capitol building. So this is actually a debrief now. So they bring this guy in, debrief him on the 13th. The CHS was admonished, hey, you shouldn't have gone into the Capitol. The handling agents explained that the FBI cannot offer any protections if he committed a crime. So you're on your own, buddy. If you committed a crime, so you better help us, so we can help you. We didn't tell you to go in there. Why'd you do that? You better really help us now. You better tell us what we want. You better help us get to the bottom of this, because we can't really protect you if you were involved in that. The handling agents asked the CHS to be mindful of self-incrimination during the debrief. You better talk to us, but you might incriminate yourself. So I wonder if they got him a lawyer. The CHS agreed to proceed with a debrief and provided no, they didn't, and provided multiple individuals who may have violated the law. At the request of the FBI HQ, the CHS was asked about her willingness to return to D.C. during the presidential inauguration, expressed a willingness to return so that they could go and continue to be a mole. However, she did not know of other individuals who planned to attend and said, so my access is limited. Continues on. We have another contact on the 19th. Forwarded another news channel telegram saying, stay at home at the 20th. I live in the most Republican states in the union. All the information we have is the Patriots are looking for trouble this month. And the 20th, that was the day before Joe Biden's inauguration, right? That took place later on the 21st, I think. So all this came out, after the fact. Another one from the 21st. Looks like they're talking about money and payments, costs associated with the debrief, food and entertainment. They paid $36. The agent paid $36. And this one, it was at $23. I don't know what those were for. Probably some hamburgers or something, but who knows? We get another report back on the 21st now. The CHS reported many Proud Boy chapters are disbanding, including the KCPB, due to the label of a terrorist organization being used and being called terrorist by the Bidens. Yeah, they wrecked the whole organization. KCBP are going to keep bonds alive through a different independent group. Big conference that ended up talking about redaction and different people. Redaction further indicated redaction's doing the same thing, right? Now we're getting to the conclusion of this. There's a KC Refugees Telegram channel talking about additional prospects and different bylaws. Let's see what this one says here. This got entered April 6, 2021. CHS stated that he or she heard about a protest on J6 online based on public knowledge. Members of the KC Proud Boys said that they're going to go in their Telegram channel. KCBP specifically told not to start anything, maintain a defensive status while attending the rally. Direction came from the leader of the KC Proud Boys. The CHS believed and created the post himself and not at the direction of anyone. The members of the CP, of the Proud Boys, were going to attend the rally, start preparing for the trip. They were going to attend the rally under somebody's wing. The KCBP attending the 1/6/21 rally discussed reports that Antifa was going to be dressed in plain clothes like Trump supporters. The KCBP attending the 1/6 rally discussed reports that Antifa was going to be there dressed in plain clothes. KCBP members attending the rally were instructed to dress similarly and not wear Proud Boys colors. Other members of the Proud Boys believed Antifa could be at the rally because blank and a member by the name of blank encountered Antifa while attending another protest in D.C. in December. In addition, KCBP only heard of a few Antifa attacks on Trump supporters at the December 2020 rally and thought their presence would help to quell additional violent attacks from Antifa. Okay, they know Antifa showing up. They say, we're going to show up as well. This was significant why KCBP decided to go back to Washington. The KCBP believed they were attending the rally to prevent Antifa from attacking Trump. This is being written by the FBI. The Proud Boys believed that they were preventing Antifa from attacking Trump supporters. None of that made the narrative, did it? The CHS stated the group decided to bring a general protective gear, including flak jackets and other things. The group discussed not carrying weapons because that would be seen as offensive and that would detract from their defensive stance. Okay, no weapons. They didn't bring them. CHS with others departed Kansas City January 4th, drove outside Lexington. The CHS bought food, pitched in for gas. On the night of the 5th, an hour outside of Washington, they learned that somebody else was purchasing orange reflective tape and not getting lost. Nobody discussed breaking barriers or taking any action. They went to sleep around midnight, woke up 3 a.m. January 6th. The group left the house, drove, found a parking lot, found a green line. The group was confused at first because they did not know where to go to meet up with other Proud Boys. The group eventually walked to Harry's to meet up with the others, but nobody showed up. On the way to Harry's, the group was approached by an individual on a bike who said, I'm with the Colorado militia. The militia asked how to find the other Proud Boys. CHS got a hold of the Ozark members and they agreed to meet up. They got to the Washington Monument. There was a different group say, hey, you want to join in on the march? The group rested for 20 to 30 minutes. The CHS did hear discussions of taking BLM Plaza later that night. The group got together and started marching at 10 to 15 minutes before the first barrier went down outside the Capitol. When getting closer to the U.S. Capitol, the CHS noticed Trump flags moving closer to the barriers in front of the Capitol grounds. Around the same time, CHS saw people moving up the stairs past the barrier closer to the Capitol. CHS was standing 2 to 3/4 of the way back in the line of the Proud Boys. Stated that he was marching with the other Proud Boys at the time, but did not think the Proud Boys had anything to do with taking down the barrier. However, the CHS explained that she changed their opinion when they saw videos of Billy and the girl taking down the first barrier, right? So they changed their mind. So they showed him videos. Oh, well, how about this? And he said, oh, I guess I'm wrong. The CHS informed the handling agent contemporaneously with the first barrier. Stated over 100 people passed through the first barrier prior to him or her getting to that. At one point, after walking past the first barrier, CHS stated they witnessed a girl kicking another barrier in front of a black female. CHS recalled the barrier, how it was leaning, and stated that the officer said, F this, and left the barrier, right? So the officer just bailed. CHS stated that he realized there's not going to be any help. Officer backed up, said, F this, I'm out. CHS made their way to the area near the scaffolding. Large group of Trump supporters stated they hung back from the front of the line, went up to Ryan Ashcock, said if he wanted to stand back. At that time, Billy pointed to another girl and said they started this. CHS stood back, watched law enforcement shoot pepper spray balls, stated they stood there for 1 to 2 hours. Saw Ryan holding his eyes while the crowd moved forward. CHS moved forward with the crowd to see what was going on. Saw numerous people freely flowing inside the Capitol, which is what we saw. The cops let him in. CHS stated there was no discussion of stopping the Electoral College process. There were chants about stopping the steal, but no overt discussions of stopping Congress from the meeting. There was no sedition. CHS kept thinking, surely this won't go past that. CHS stated the group discussed going into the Capitol for a while after standing outside. They had numerous excuses for not going in. CHS ultimately heard someone saying they hoped nobody was stealing or destroying things of historical significance. Yeah. After hearing this, the CHS determined that there was justification for entering the building to prevent or observe the documents and catalog what was happening. Upon entry, CHS noticed people aimlessly wandering around, entered a small conference room to the right, noticed the room didn't belong to any congressperson, and felt sorry for the cleaners because the carpet was dirty. CHS then noticed and entered a large room with pillars, went into the area where they saw law enforcement in a tug-of-war match with a protester. Protester paused, law enforcement officer ran at the same time. After the doors had opened, CHS recalled being instructed by Chris to move a podium to block the door. CHS asked for the helmet back. 10 minutes later, the group went downstairs. CHS followed. Once downstairs, CHS saw glass doors with House of Representatives on it. CHS thought the group had gone far enough, made an announcement that the protesters' voices had been heard. It was time to go. Around the same time, a large group of protesters, including a former Capitol Hill police officer, talked to the group, informed them there had been a shooting. Ashley Babbitt. CHS made his way out of the Capitol building and assisted with telling officers to clear the building. CHS assisted clearing the building. Ushered out a window by law enforcement. CHS did not take or touch anything, did not break anything, did not put a hand on law enforcement officer. CHS stated he believed FBI would not want him to stand outside. He took a bunch of photos, 29 photographs, 7 videos, and gave it all to the FBI. That's the big narrative. Telling him now that you're under view of the FBI, and this is the concluding document. Date of this report from July 29th. Following a direct question regarding the equipment brought from the CHS, 2 motorcycle helmets, body armor. CHS reported Proud Boy members blank loaned the armor to him. CHS took the loaned armor and returned it. CHS reported that Chris handed the pepper spray for use against Antifa, but the spray was never used. Right. Okay. Well, there you go. So, doesn't sound like seditious conspiracy to me. Holy moly. All right. So that is the report that the Gateway Pundit was able to uncover. And there's a lot more to that, right? There's text messages, and that's just the beginning, opening salvo, as they say. So CHS embedded. We also see that the CHS was backing up the Proud Boys. No violence. They specifically said, don't want any violence, all defensive postures, none of it involving stopping the electoral count. Went in 30 minutes after it all happened, where they're clearing the buildings, and they're being prosecuted, right? Because they're the Proud Boys for seditious conspiracy. So absolutely amazing. But that, my friends, is it for the stories of the day. We're going to jump into your questions right now. We talked about Pat Cipollone, Zoe Lofgren. We learned that the J6 committee does not even corroborate their own evidence. Okay. No, they don't corroborate their own evidence, which means it's not really evidence. It's just random people just talking about whatever, because there's no cross-examination and they're not even corroborating it. And we don't trust them at all. So we talked a lot about that. We, of course, know that there were a ton of confidential human sources. In my humble opinion, probably a lot of FBI agents, ATF agents, who knows, they're on the field on January 6th. And of course, we've got some major Steve Bannon updates. Bad day for Steve Bannon in court, but he's got trials coming up here next week. It starts on Monday, 1 week from today, and we're going to be covering that in depth and live. And so we are going to get into that. I'm going to press this button, and we're going to see what this does. And then we're going to jump into your questions and comments right now while that finishes up. So here is a quick refresh of our locals community. Let me get this all situated for us here. And we've got some questions coming in from our locals community. We're going to do a scroll down to the bottom. And boom, here it is. First one in the house came in from Kenny Cole, says, I hope Bannon burns the whole thing down. Reagan was right. Dems know so many things that aren't true. And Karaoke Princess says, yeah, I have a feeling that is the plan. That is from Kenny Cole. And I think that is actually the plan. I mean, Steve Bannon seems like he's pretty excited about that. Cooper is here, says, what kind of evidence will the judge allow? Will the judge try to limit his testimony? And this came out, it looks like, before the show started, Cooper. So we sort of went through a lot of this. Most evidence that Steve Bannon wants to present is not going to happen. Most of the evidence that Bannon wants to present is not going to be allowed. And that's now it's now a thing. So, all All right. We got Pookie's Ma says, here's a short clip of Biden getting called out today by a reporter on the Hunter fiasco. And this is the True Social link, which, by the way, your boy's over on True Social. If you want to follow me at Robert Govea, whatever I am.
I'm dealing with gun violence.
What do you think about Hunter?
Because make no mistake, sit down, you'll hear what I have to say.
What do you think about Hunter, your son? There's a video of him arguing with a hooker about how much crack he has. What do you think about that, Mr. President?
Okay? Because make no mistake about it.
Is that real? Oh my goodness, is that real? Did he actually say that? Wow. Is that a real clip? Holy moly. That's amazing. Okay, thank you for that. He didn't even know what to say. Thank you for that, Pookie's Ma. Holy moly. Oh, so somebody says it's not real? Yeah, Matt Burr says not real. It wasn't real. Yeah, that felt a little cutted. That felt a little clipped a little bit, right? But okay, anyways. So, all right, got to be careful. Former LEO says, Rob, did you hear about Governor Pritzker trying to blame the NRA for gun violence and deaths in Illinois? Gives a new meaning to moron. I wonder what percent is committed by NRA members. Probably 0, right? I mean, how many school shootings have been done by NRA members? 0. Here is Jeff Rook. Says, Rob, not exactly Bannon. I'm not sure if you've already touched on this. Tamara Lick, or Litch, I forget how to say her name. We talked about her when we covered the Canadian trucker freedom convoy. If Viva conveyed the word accurately, the judge is sending her back to detention, awaiting trial. Spoke a fair bit about what public opinion would be if he let her go free on bail. Are you kidding? Public opinion? That's not a relevant factor. I understand law as an attempt to take what society sees as just and actualize it in a way that facilitates cooperation and stability, but this conflicts with my view that justice is justice and no other factor should play a role. What, if any, weight you think should be given to public opinion in legal matters? 0. Similar to the train wreck hypothetical, would you, for instance, release someone from prison who'd done nothing wrong, even if you hypothetically knew it would cause riots that would harm thousands? Oh, so, I mean, that's an easy one. Yeah, I mean, well, so, yeah, I mean, if they're innocent, yeah, you have to release them. Yes, you have to release innocent people. Like, there is no, we punish one innocent man so that 1,000 whatever go free. Like, none of that's, no, none of that. I don't believe in any of that, right? Everybody, the presumption of innocence and due process, those are immutable. We do not cross the line on those. There's none of those. Now, the indicia for release conditions should be, I mean, basic, right? These are pretty standard things that we talk about all the time in law. Is somebody a flight risk? Are they going to flee? Are they going to return back to attend the proceedings? Are they a danger to themselves? Are they a danger to others? If the answer is no, and the person's going to come back, the goal in American law is to put the least onerous restrictions, or at least here in Arizona, right? The least onerous restrictions on a person before they are detained. Why? Because we have the presumption of innocence in this country. I don't know what they have in Canada, but if maybe it's the presumption of not being offended, therefore we can keep people who are offensive to us in custody indefinitely. I have no idea. Thunder7 is here, says, Rob, my legal question to you is this. The J6 Clown Show will take Bannon's testimony in private and only leak out bits and pieces to serve their agenda. Will we ever hear the full testimony? And what happened with Pat Cipollone? Well, we don't know. The committee is going to show us. They're going to copy and paste his testimony along with Steve Bannon's if we ever get it. Now, I really don't, if the Republicans take over, I hope that they release every single video, every single conversation, every depo, every transcript, every hour of every single shred of digital evidence. I'd love to see it. Miss Lucky is here and Sergeant Bob is here. Sergeant Bob says, so Steve Bannon gets the deal with a DC jury composed of Dems. Too bad he can't get a change of venue to like Texas or Arizona. It's a good point, Sergeant. Says, Miss Lucky and I are glad to be in Arizona and out of the Canadian dictatorship. We're glad to have you here, Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob. We're grateful that you're here in Arizona. Over on YouTube, we had some super chats come in. Tara Raynar says, hi, everyone from Canada. Praying for all the political prisoners, especially Tamara, a tiny Metis woman with bigger balls than Castro's spawn, Trudeau. That is true. Trudeau is a little tiny dictator with, he may be transitioning already or something. I don't know. Richard Jack says, will Nancy and her crew be subpoenaed per Bannon's request? The judge ruled today on that. The answer is no. quashed those subpoenas, said that they are protected from by the speech and debate clause. They have certain immunities that mean they can't be subpoenaed to come in and talk about what a bunch of criminals they are. It's pretty nice power. Thank you, Richard Jack, for your support here. Jenny B says, when will the J6 Stalinists subpoena you, Rob? I don't know. You heard something from someone you know who about the thing. That is true. That is true. I did hear something from someone I know about the thing. Your turn next to face Cheney. I would love, they should subpoena me. I would love to get a subpoena. Okay. I was broadcasting from here in Scottsdale, Arizona. But at the time, we had a Discord server before they banned us, and there was probably some insurrectionary conversation happening in there. I mean, I'm just coming out. FBI, we were talking about the election on our Discord server. It's true. We had a lot of questions about it. We were talking about it there. Liz Cheney. Hey, Liz, Benny Thompson. Hey, I got a lot of open questions about the election. And I might vote for Trump. You should probably subpoena me. Haul my butt down in there and I'll film the whole thing. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, let's see what else we've got. Thunder7 was here. He says, Rob, you think Trump is paying for Bannon's lawyers? I think he technically is, yeah. And will they try to impeach him for this? Probably. They're calling it inciting domestic terrorism. They are so out of control with fear of the MAGA king. I hope we get a whole nother season of Trump MAGA King because it's just going to be fun. Thunder7 says, I miss the Donald Win website. The best memes ever. Yeah, that's right. Whatever happened to that website? The Donald.win. I actually try to open it up right now, but that sounds like it's probably dangerous. That is funny. Okay. We had Tara Rayner, Richard Jack, Jenny B. K Bean is here. K Bean says, isn't being on time racist? Is it? I think everything's racist. So yeah, I'd probably add that to the list. I mean, being late is probably racist. Being on time is racist. Not believing in time is racist. It's complicated. John McGarvey is here, says for the first 10 pages or 2 gallons of gas with a super chat. Thank you, John. So John is already preemptively supporting the show with some donos because we know we're going to spend the Sussman trial. And I haven't tallied the whole thing up yet. I have all the invoices in my inbox. I think we broke even about. I think we got close to breaking even. It's about $3,500, I think, if I add it all up. And I think you can go back and even look up the shows. We probably got close on breaking even. So thank you, everybody, for your support. John is starting the train early for us, John, which is supporting the Transcript Dono Fund. Thank you, John. Bear Ashby says, just to say thank you. Thank you, Bear. I appreciate it. You're always here and you're always supportive. Thank you. Oil Smoke Jones says, when Congress is demonstrably contemptible, contempt of Congress should not be a crime. Anyway, here's a small contribution to the cause. It's not small at all, Oil Smoke. Thank you. It's very nice, very generous of you. And it will go a good way. We are going to be coming out of pocket for the Bannon transcripts. And so that's where all this stuff goes. And, I don't talk a lot about sort of where the support of the show goes, but it's the resources to get stuff for the show. And I've got some pretty big ambitions to grow the show and grow the audience and take this thing to the next level. So I appreciate you all supporting me. K Bean is here, says, Rob, what if Bannon was worried about COVID? That's a good point. Yeah, he's social distancing. K Bean, I know I think the point of that question from her was that she was sort of being condescending. Why is it Steve Bannon didn't even come to his own trial? What if he would have said COVID? She would have been like, oh, well, okay, that's a good point because I am a COVID hysteric and now you're making me feel silly. Thank you, K-Bean. Maria Luisa is here. Thank you, Maria Luisa. Sorry to botch that name. Maria Luisa is here. And with a nice super chat, but no question. I appreciate that very much, Maria. Thank you. Chris Wolney with another one. Says, revise the speech and debate clause. Nobody should face criminal liability from anything out of a circus where Liz, Bernie, and their crony witnesses lie to us. Yeah, it does feel like the cards are stacked a little bit heavily, right, against the one side. And that is all by design. They know what they're doing. They've gamed this whole thing out. They've got very smart lawyers. This is probably a concoction of Mark Elias and Michael Sussman. Honestly, like, I'm not joking. They're not working together anymore at Perkins Coie, but what's his face? Mark Elias is still running the democracy docket, and he's very aggressive. Who else do we have? Dab Gangsta Or, yeah, that's it. Says, Rob, I'm still convinced that our politicians are high off of nostalgia of the 60s through the 80s. This is wild. I completely agree with you. It sort of feels like we're reliving it, doesn't it? Like it's almost like the 70s again. We're going to be into the 80s soon. The crime wave is going to go from one way to another, like the pendulum swings one way to the other. We had a big defund the police movement. We're going to see a big refund the police movement. We're going to see crime waves, pop up, and then we're going to see the politicians come out and try to crush the crime waves. And I think we're going to see a lot more of these crime waves in the foreseeable future. And I'm not going to go on a tirade on that one right now. I was about to, but I have counseled against it. Richard Jack says, will Pelosi, Liz, Pencilneck be subpoenaed after the November electoral massacre? I would hope so. I would love to get to the bottom of January 6th. I got a lot of questions about it. Many questions. We have a whole mind map, and I would add a whole different, I think I might have actually added a questions mind map. Do I have questions in here? No, I can't think of any right now. Yeah, anyways. So I have a lot of questions about it, Richard, and I would love to know if we could get answers, but I'm not optimistic about it. Bear Ashby says, yes, that click is real on Newsmax and on Tucker. You're kidding me. Are you kidding me? Let's see if, let's see what else. Okay, so I'm not denying that that's real or confirmed or not. I'm going to look into it though, because that sounds really, really juicy and like a lot of fun. And I'd like to see that. Okay, here is Fred Cescini. Cescini, is that how I say it, Fred? That is a beautiful last name. Ceschini. Cescini? Cescini? I've never seen that one, Fred. Welcome as a member. I'm glad that you're here. Fred joined up on the YouTube membership, which is just awesome. That means you're going to get the new walk and talks, which we're doing every day, almost every day. I try to take a break some days, but it's a lot of fun, Fred. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Hopefully you comment and connect with people on the inside of the membership group. And Beth Coddington. Oh, Beth Coddington is here. My heart goes aflutter. She says, listening in, entertaining and informative as usual. Here's some cash for the transcripts. It's starting to get interesting. Love you, sweetums. Love you back, Beth. Oh, it's so funny. Beth cracks me up. Okay, so Beth with a very nice, generous dono. Going to support those transcripts for Steve Bannon. Sweetums. Love you, Beth. Okay, and Fred Cescini also with a super chat, also donating to support those transcript donos. And thank you, Fred. I'm super, super appreciative of you all. We're going to do a refresh over on locals, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. I know there's some people chatting away over on Rumble. We've got Blue Thean is here, Sky71, John Ace 1, Nana Bear's in the house, Jeff Waters is over there, Mama Suri. We're getting some activity over on our Rumbles channel. Shout out to everybody. Sioux City Sue is here. Bite My Salty is here. Dog Digger and Don Kish. Lots of activity on Rumble. Shout out to everybody over on Rumble. Okay. So back over on locals. Looks like our last one is here from JC the Music Man. Says, Rob, I received a call today that one of my younger cousins was found dead from a possible OD. I believe our family will be okay, just asking for thoughts and prayers. After speaking with several family members, the common thoughts were that no one knew he had previously recovered from a bad habit. That must have slipped. Well, Jeremy, I'm so sorry to hear that, my friend. I'm really sorry to hear that. And so you've got my prayers, my friend, and I'm sure you're going to get the prayers of everybody else in this community as well. These are horrific times, my friends. And Jeremy, you're not alone, man. Look, I cannot help but plug ericshouse.org. Okay. It's an organization that I'm a part of. I've gone through a situation like this. I lost my younger brother to suicide unexpectedly, came out of nowhere. Nobody had any idea. Woke up one morning, got a call screaming. My mom was screaming on it. I'll never forget it. It's a horrific thing that you are going through and your family's going to go through. I would encourage you to, take the time you need to process it. Sometimes people jump into these things and move maybe too quickly. I know I did, but I would also encourage you to reach out and connect with people if you need that, right? ericshouse.org is a good organization for that. They focus on helping people in these tragic situations. When you've lost somebody from overdose, suicide or a tragic death. That's what they're there to help with. And so it's a very accessible organization. If you can't afford it, they can help. Jeremy, I'd encourage you to reach out to them if you need it, or pass that along to your family. But I will be praying for you, my man, and I know that a lot of other people here on the show will. So, that's just the worst. And younger cousin, and that's just the worst. It's going on all over this country, man. It breaks my heart to hear it. Jeremy, thanks for sharing that, brother. We're going to send some prayers your way. We'll do one final refresh, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Yeah, and Jeremy's getting some prayer shout-outs over on Rumble and over on Locals and elsewhere. So, man, tough stuff. All right, my friends. Well, it looks like it's it for me. Let me give some final shout outs over to the YouTube chat. Who's here? We got Lean's in the house. Shout out to Lean. Paul Minot is here. Everybody's giving some love to Jeremy. What a great chat. What a great chat. Jeremy, you got a lot of love here, my friend. So hopefully that lands with you and your family. A lot of good vibes out there. We got Diane's here. Misfit Mama is here, is welcome her to the shout out member. Talbert's mom is in the house. Shout out to Talbert's mom. Lance Miller. Real Life is here along with Diane B. Andrew Richardson. Ladybug Baldiga is here. Curtis Bartle, K. Bean, Beth Coddington, and everybody in the house. DeFreak says, thank you for answering my email. You're welcome, DeFreak. I spent a lot of time this weekend answering a bunch of emails. So hopefully I've got all my emails caught up. And thanks for acknowledging that. Thank you for saying thank you about it. I spent a lot of time. I like to connect with you people. So thank you for that. Okay. And Karen O. Lean is here. Everybody's here. What a great day. Okay. And so we are going to wrap it up right there, my friends. We're going to leave it there. Let me give some final shout outs before we head out for the day. Thank you to everybody who is supporting the work that we do by joining our communities, either at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, by joining on the YouTube membership. If you want to carry on the conversation before and after the show, we do that on our Locals membership. I am a criminal defense lawyer. I know we have a lot of fun here on the show, but every day, most of my day is spent helping good people charged with crimes, or really helping my team that really helps good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their lives. And so if you know anybody in the state of Arizona who's in trouble at all, traffic tickets, DUIs, anything that we can help with, 480-787-0394 is the number to call. Free case evaluations online at rrlawaz.com. And big shout outs to the mods in the house. Vienticus Prime. I think Vienticus is on vacation. I feel feels a little weird around these parts. But we got K Bean in the house. Just Cause in the house. We got to add Lean's in the house now. We got to add Lean here. What am I doing over here? We got Lean, and we also got Lean is here. And we also had, the Playing Hookie's in the house. What the heck? Well, we didn't have Playing Hookie in here either. Playing Hookie I think we added Playing Hookie last time. So Playing Hookie is here in the house. Playing Hookie 1. Boom. Got it. Shout out to all the mods in the house for holding the fort down. And of course, to our Spotlight supporters. These are people who are supporting the work with a little extra love that we do here. Check them out and please support them as well. We've got qsimple.com, which is John, who's in the house. Please go check out his website and his work. Chris Romero supports the show with a little extra oomph. David B3 and Dr. EMB in the house. They're all Spotlight supporters, either on Locals or on YouTube. And if you want to share some of this screen real estate with a link or a social profile or your name or whatever, you can do that. John Q Simple's in the house over on Locals. I just saw him pop up. And so shout out to John. JC, the Music Man, says it's over 100 here. Do you know what it is in Jeremy? That's cute. Okay. First of all, you have humidity. You're in Tennessee. Let me show you what it is in Arizona. It's ridiculous. Every year it catches me by surprise. So let's hear. It is 111 right now. 111 degrees. No, that's 113 actually. Here's the phone. 113 degrees. You see that right there? Look at that. Brutal. And it's partly cloudy. So imagine what happens if the clouds go away. 115 says John. It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. But it is a dry heat, according to Jumpin' Jeff. It's true. It is a dry heat. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us for the day. Zach Nichols says, keep that crap over there. It is so hot. It's like hot in this room and my air's on low. Like the air conditioning has a hard time keeping up. But it is Arizona. It is temporary. The rest of the year, we have beautiful weather here. It's a great place to live. Misfit Mama became a member on YouTube as well. And so shout out to Misfit Mama. And to those of you, we actually do a lot of cool stuff on the YouTube. Let me show you. It's not working here. I wanted to show you what it looks like if you are a member and you navigate to our channel. You're going to see a whole section that looks just like this, okay, on the YouTube. Now, on Locals, it looks a little bit different, but all of these are member-only videos, okay? So if you're a member, you get these. This morning, I posted a 30-minute video about hacks. You can see I was showing you some of the Phoenix Library. Did the Three Stooges video walking around, what was that, 2 days ago on Saturday, hidden messages, talking about fatalities. All right, this is the stuff you get if you join and become a member. And so big welcomes to Misfit Mama, Fred Cescini, and others who signed up today. But that, my friends, is it for us. We are going to be back to do it again tomorrow. Now, there is, I forgot to mention this. Isn't there a hearing tomorrow? Let's see here. I thought they had one scheduled, but apparently, at least on their website, I think there is one tomorrow, but it's not on their committee. They haven't scheduled it quite yet. Anyways, so we're going to be back tomorrow to cover it all again and more. I want to thank everybody for being a part of the show today. Thank you for all of your very generous support. I hope you have a tremendous evening. Beth Coddington says, I'm sorry, Robert. You'll have to move here for us to continue our tree stay. Beth, this is a public channel. This is a public forum. You can't talk about that here publicly. Everybody's going to know. All right, that's it for me. Love you, Beth. Love everybody. Thank you for all your generous support here today. I hope your week is off to an amazing start. We're going to unplug tonight. We're going to watch what happens around the world. We're going to talk about it tomorrow during our morning walk and talk. And then I'll see the rest of you here tomorrow. Same time, same place, same location. Have a great night, my friends. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.